Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. After witnessing the terrifying combat power displayed by the Marine fleet firsthand, their reverence for the world government increased by several points. So the Marine headquarters warships were that big, the decks were that sturdy, the cannon range was that far, and the power was that great. And even the seemingly weakest Marine soldiers showed strength, speed, and reaction comparable to the Royal Army's generals. As for the officers wearing the cloak of justice, each one was so fast that the naked eye could barely keep up. In Ryugu Palace, 10,000 meters beneath the seabed on Fishman Island, King Neptune was also watching this naval warfare between the Marines and pirates with Queen Atoheim and the Left Minister, among other officials. I am now extremely glad that I agreed to the Marines setting up a branch here. Vice Admiral Akanu and Vice Admiral Kizaru are both so strong, and Vice Admiral Aokiji, who is also an admiral candidate, must be similar. Our Fishman Island will no longer have to worry about pirate attacks. King Neptune exclaimed sincerely. His Majesty is wise. The Left Minister bowed and replied. In fact, these Fishman tribe officials, both big and small, and the Sea King Army soldiers responsible for guarding, were all somewhat frightened by the combat on the screen feed at this moment. The Fishman tribe considered themselves 10 times stronger than humans in terms of strength. This wasn't just the idea prevalent in the Fishman district, but the mainstream view throughout Fishman Island. They admitted that there were humans stronger than them, but they thought there wouldn't be many. However, the combatants in the current footage were all humans, not a single Fishman tribe compatriot was visible. Furthermore, aside from the Marine soldiers, any random person pulled from the screen gave the Sea King Army soldiers a feeling of being impossible to contend with. Your Majesty, your minister also heard that Vice Admiral Dragon, currently stationed at the Sabati Archipelago, is also a Logia system Hurricane Fruit ability user, and he's also the son of Vice Admiral Garp. Oh? King Neptune looked at the other person in surprise. He had heard that the Marine base commander stationed at the Sabati Archipelago was Dragon, but he didn't know his specific ability. Or rather, the Dragon, son of Garp, in his impression was a non-ability user. This is a good thing. The stronger Dragon is, the safer our citizens who travel and reside in the Sabati Archipelago will be in the future. After speaking, his gaze returned to the projection screen, only to find it completely filled with golden light, making it impossible to see anything. The king didn't mind. Thinking to himself, he hoped the Marines could win this battle. Holy Land, Mary Joyce. In the social plaza of Pangaea Castle, in the manifestation of Saint Nerona, had someone remove the net bag from the court. Then, sitting on a lounge chair, he watched the high-definition live broadcast screen feed projected onto the sky above the court with Miok, Jian, and Stussy. Early this morning, he had introduced Miok to Jian and Stussy. Then, under Miok's helpless expression, he played an interesting and exciting game of tennis ball with him. That kid didn't really know how to play, but as soon as he picked up the racket and played one game, his proficiency soared. The basic techniques of tennis ball were simply not difficult for a sword master. Interestingly, Jian knew Miok, or rather, had heard of his reputation outside. Hawkeye's the sword master, wielding the supreme grade sharp sword, Black Blade Yoru. She just didn't expect to meet him in this place, and his identity was even that of a celestial dragon. Therefore, Jian was now full of curiosity about Miok. While watching the live broadcast screen feed, she would occasionally steal a glance at the latter, who was seriously watching the combat. Ah! I really want to fight him, but he's also a celestial dragon, what should I do? This woman's mood was incredibly conflicted at this moment. Just then, purple lightning snakes rolling in dark clouds appeared on the projection screen. Seeing this scene, Im's mouth curved slightly, revealing an extremely handsome smile. The key figure has arrived. Is the first one to appear Charlotte Linlin. The next moment, streaks of purple lightning and wild thunder occupied the entire screen feed, like pythons bearing their fangs and claws, biting towards the warships and the Marine officers engaged in combat at an astonishing speed. Strangely, some officers clearly avoided them by using instant transmission, but those electric snakes automatically turned and continued to pursue them. In almost an instant, they electrocuted over 10 low-ranking officer, field grades and hundreds of Marines of various ranks. Only those with combat power above Colonel who had mastered hockey managed to withstand it. A Logia system ability user? Mihawk asked in surprise. Indeed, after witnessing Borslino's Yasukani no Magatama, it was hard not to associate this kind of super large-scale natural phenomenon attack with Logia ability. No, Big Mom has arrived. Im said softly. Sure enough, under the filming of the Adil Propaganda Department government officials, a Jolly Roger printed with a chocolate-colored hat, pink curly hair, and bright red lipstick appeared before countless people's eyes. That's the Big Mom Pirates Queen Mama Chanter. It was that reporter from a certain newspaper agency, relying on his knowledge of the various influences, who shouted out the information he knew in the plaza on the Sabati archipelago. Has a 4 emperors joined the combat? Seeking subscriptions. Oh my god, little author's hands are shaking right now. Chapter 99, Admirals are human natural disasters. Ha 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 ha, let's go, brats. The big guy is finally here. About 1 nautical mile away from the battlefield, a battleship flying a pirate flag let out enthusiastic roars. Immediately after, the crewmates began operating the sail and ship rudder, accelerating. It wasn't just them, in fact, there were many other pirate crews around who chose to observe the combat on the Marine fleet's side. This was mainly because the world government's public broadcast made it much easier for them to check the combat situation. These people felt that the Marines' combat power was a bit too high, and their own side would have difficulty dealing with it. After all, Admiral Sengoku and Marine Hero Garp were present, plus 2 Admiral candidates who were top-tier Logia ability users. The deterrent force was immense. So these opportunists quietly waited. As the saying goes, when the sky falls, the tall ones bear the brunt. They were waiting for the tall ones to come and hold back Sengoku and Garp, and preferably even tie down the 2 Admiral candidates. This would give them a chance to snatch a cargo ship full of treasure or seize a warship or something similar. Now that the Big Mom pirates had finally arrived, and Charlotte Linlin herself had indeed taken action, they naturally weren't willing to keep wasting time. In another area, on another pirate ship, a cadre looked at his captain in confusion and asked, "Boss, aren't we joining the combat? A 4 emperors is here." Hey, idiot, look at the scale of this naval warfare. There are only 2 cargo ships. So, what's the chance of snatching one in a melee involving 10 warships and dozens of pirate ships? The captain looked at his stupid subordinate with contempt. The latter scratched his head and asked, puzzled. Then why did we come here? Hey. The captain took a puff of his cigar, puffing out smoke and revealing a smug smile. I'm waiting for this great combat to end, waiting for those fellow pirates who are heavily wounded and exhausted after the combat. The surrounding pirates were stunned, staring at their captain dumbfounded. They thought to themselves, this is too insidious, a bit despicable, but it's really a good idea. Some people are willing to be sharks, some are willing to be eagles that strike after the initial attack, but there are also those who act like hyenas, eyeing corpses and rotten flesh. The complexity and wickedness of the human heart were evident. Rumble, 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 mama. Charlotte Linlin, already 44 years old and nearly 9 meters tall, stood alone at the bow of the Queen Mama Chanter. Arms spread wide and raised high, facing the sea wind, sea waves, and heavy rain, she looked at the constantly falling purple thunderstorm in the distance and laughed wildly to her heart's content. Goldy Roger. Let this lightning and thunder be the curtain call fireworks Mama gives to One Piece. From now on, this great sea will return to the era of rocks. She laughed louder and louder, even laughing until tears came out. How ironic, how ridiculous. The era of the Pirate King only lasted less than 2 years. Truly amazing, world government. As soon as her words fell, the laughter stopped. Charlotte Linlin's eyes flashed with terrifying anger. She looked at Sengoku and Garp from afar and said through gritted teeth, "You have caused the destruction of the rules of the game." Humphrey. Suddenly, a hockey-infused cold snort seemed to spread throughout the entire battlefield. Immediately after, with a buzzing sound, a golden radiance erupted from a warship. Many people subconsciously thought that Vice Admiral Kizaru had used some special move again, but when they turned their heads, they saw a great Buddha, golden all over, looking indifferently at the thunderclouds in the sky. Don't be too presumptuous in front of justice. Buddha shockwave. This golden Buddha Arhat, as if descended from the long river of mythology into the present world, slammed a giant palm towards the sky. In an instant, a pale golden semi-transparent air current blasted out, rapidly expanding in midair, accompanied by streaks of golden lightning. Clap. Clap. Clap, the shockwave, carrying golden light and lightning, flew into the thick thunderclouds in an instant. Those purple lightning snakes attempting to stop its approach, no matter how much they bombarded and hacked, could not shake it even a tiny bit. Boom, an extremely huge, deafening roar, loud enough to be heard by the audience thousands of miles away, occurred. Both enemy and ally sides on the entire battlefield even briefly ceased combat because of it. The sky opened. Far away from the battlefield, on a pirate ship approaching at full speed, preparing to join the combat, the crewmates stared dumbfounded at the thick thunderclouds forcefully blasted open by the golden light. The azure sky appeared before people's eyes again. The gale dissipated, the heavy rain stopped, and all the purple thunderstorm was swept away. The sky cleared. It is said that manpower is no match for natural disaster, and natural disaster is invincible. But in this world, there is a small group of people who possess the strength to resist, and even defeat, natural disaster. Some of them are called marine admirals, some are called four emperors. They are all referred to as the highest combat power or power peak. This is too exaggerated. Is the strength of a marine admiral really this outrageous? Stussy exclaimed in surprise, covering her mouth. She had never witnessed a combat between highest combat power users before. Even she, an elite of Cypher Pol 9 agent, had such an attitude, so one can imagine how shocked and terrified the citizens in various places in the world were. Suddenly, she noticed that Nerona Saint's expression remained as calm as still water, without even a slight change in her gaze. Could this lord also be? The more she thought about it, the more terrifying it became. This woman even began to suspect that the 5 elders above might each possess strength comparable to Admiral Sengoku. After all, this Nerona Saint is a candidate for the next 5 elders. Mama, it hurts. Woo-wah-woo, a cloud mass with purple electric current, crying very anthropomorphically, returned to the Queen Mama chanter, wailing aggrievedly around Charlotte Linlin. Ma'am, you are one of my souls, Zeus, you won't die. Big Mom grinned at the little thundercloud and laughed. At this moment, her second son, Charlotte Kitakuri, stepped out from among his siblings, holding a trident, and asked, Mama, are we joining the combat? No, Just as Charlotte Linlin was about to answer her most outstanding son, she suddenly turned her head and looked towards the distant sea surface on the other end. There, something appeared that caused most people to feel terrified and despair. Sea waves. Big sea waves. A super great tsunami, rolling with surging seawater, visually estimated to be several hundred meters high. Its range didn't look very big, but it was enough to cover the entire marine warship force. What is this thing now? This combat is too terrifying. Captain, let's run quickly. The pirates currently engaged in combat with the Marines immediately panicked. An atmosphere of fear spread across the already chaotic battlefield. Even the lower-ranking Marines from headquarters were somewhat trembling with fear. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Garp's hearty laughter resounded throughout the entire battlefield. Whitebeard, you've finally arrived. You really made this old man wait a long time. After speaking, Sengoku saw Garp disappear from the warship with a boom, charging towards the great tsunami at a speed unknown how many times faster than sound. This bastard left without permission again. Sengoku helplessly shook his head, then sighed. Forget it, this is also good. Since he took action, those sea waves won't come over. Just let him block Whitebeard. Immediately, he focused his attention on Big Mom in the distance. There was still a difficult woman over there, but for some unknown reason, she unexpectedly had no intention of approaching at all. Chapter 100. This chapter is dedicated to Kikyo's loneliness and all friends who tipped. You really sent this old man a fine sandbag. Garp stood on the sea surface using moonwalk, looking at the surging super tsunami with a grin, revealing 2 rows of neat white teeth as he laughed. Looking from his distance and angle, the height of several hundred meters truly gave a sense of reaching the heavens and piercing the earth. He looked like a tiny ant standing before such a natural disaster. But there was no fear or retreat on his face, instead, it was filled with excitement and eagerness. His Garp took a deep breath, and strength began to gather within his body. His entire being erupted with an incredibly fierce and masculine overbearing aura. With a slight movement, his tendons and bones roared, and his limbs and large spine were drawn taut like a fully pulled bow. Ha! With a loud shout, the terrifying man began to exert force with his arms. Veins bulged, and muscles knotted as if about to explode. The dark sheen on his arms condensed onto his right fist at a speed visible to the naked eye. Perhaps due to the excessive concentration and compression of Haki, streaks of dark red lightning began to appear, and the surrounding light and shadow seemed to distort. Fist bone, iron fist. The massive black and red fist tore through a large section of the air in front of him, emitting an extremely violent and terrifying explosion. He punched directly into the super tsunami surging towards him. Boom, it was impossible to describe the sound. Thunder? A volcanic eruption? Or just a muffled thud? Ears seemed to stop working at that moment. But everyone present, the pirates, the marines, and even the people of the world in the world nations, various islands, and various places, saw it clearly with their eyes. In an instant, truly just an instant, the huge sea waves in front of Garp's tiny figure were gone, vanished, evaporated into thin air. Yet, visually, it seemed as though some residual screen feed of the tsunami being slowly torn apart by the fist wind remained, and yet it also seemed not to. However, at this moment, everyone's attention was no longer on the tsunami but on the surging fist wind Garp had unleashed. After the fist wind dispersed the super tsunami, its remaining power still split the sea's surface ahead into two, continuing to carry the dark red lightning and pressing towards the pirate ship resembling a whale in the distance with overwhelming force. It's the Whitebeard pirates. That's the Moby Dick. The newspaper reporter's nerves were already somewhat numb. Everything he had seen today was simply too astonishing. Looking at the majestic man who appeared on the screen, holding a naginata and standing atop the whale head, he murmured to himself. He came to? In fact, ever since Rocks, the pirate considered the strongest by most people was not Golden Lion Shiki, nor Pirate King Roger, and certainly not Big Mom Charlotte Linlin. It was this man, 6 meters and 66 centimeters tall, with a pair of white crescent mustaches and a head of golden curly hair, who possessed the tremor fruit ability, known as the strongest Paramsha type. The captain of the Whitebeard pirates, Edward Newgate. Gorahaha, your fist is as hard as ever, you bastard. Edward Newgate faced the surging fist wind heading straight for him with a hearty laugh, simultaneously raising Murakamagiri, one of the supreme grade swords, in his hand. As he activated the power of his tremor fruit, a milky white halo appeared on Murakamagiri's crescent blade. This was the phenomenon of vibrating to the extreme. At the same time, Armament Hockey and Conqueror's Hockey were also attached, and streaks of purple-red lightning began to burst forth. Clearly, facing Garp's iron fist, even Whitebeard had to take it seriously. Pops. The next moment, under the stunned gaze of Marco and the others behind him, and the people of the world, Murakamagiri slashed out like lightning. The tremor power and dense hockey on it collided with a surging fist wind less than 20 meters from the Moby Dick. Immediately, a vast dark deep hole appeared on the sea surface between them. The fist wind and the tremor wrestled against each other. Red-black lightning and purple-red lightning fiercely intertwined, and the surging air current almost solidified into a wall, constantly pushing back the incoming seawater. A moment later, the fist wind, with only residual power left, was directly dispersed by the tremor power. Meanwhile, at the high altitude of 7,000 meters, unseen by everyone, the White Sea was churning like boiling water. Countless creatures within it exploded like balloons. Far away on the red line, in the Holy Land Mari-Ejos looked at this scene on the projection screen and felt a surge of emotion. In his previous life, some people thought that as long as they could control seawater or stir up large waves, they could thrive in this world, counter this ability user, instantly kill that character, and so on. But in reality? In the original world line, 2 years ago, Luffy and Zoro could already work together to blast open a tunnel over 100 meters long in the super tsunami known as Aqua Laguna, allowing a sea train with over 20 carriages to pass through smoothly without getting a single drop of water on it. With such terrifying strength, what use are waterfalls or water waves? Aren't they all just blasted apart into water spray with one hit, maybe creating a rainbow in the process? Some also said that if it weren't for Okiji's ice fruit ability at the Summit War, the 2 tsunamis raised by Whitebeard would have been enough to wipe out all the Marines, including Akainu and Kizaru. Thinking about it now, how ridiculous. Something like a tsunami several hundred meters high is just something used to build atmosphere and decorate a scene for the experts of this world. As for waterfalls, large waves, and water walls, any pirate with a bounty of nearly 10 million is enough to easily blast them apart. For example, Butchie of the Black Cat Pirates in the future East Blue could stump and shatter a rock formation of several hundred square meters. It's true that an ability user feels a feeling of powerlessness if more than half of their body is submerged in water, but the premise is that the water can actually touch the person. If a person's every punch and kick possesses immense power, capable of generating surging wind pressure, or if their ability is sufficient to counter it, or if their speed is enough to evade, then what use is water? 90% of this world is seawater. Whether pirates or marines, they basically spend their entire lives living and engaging in combat on the Great Sea. Coupled with the Great Sea's various extreme weather, when it comes to experience in dealing with large sea waves, few people in any world can compare to them. It can be said that playing with water in front of the experts of this world is like showing off one slight skill before an expert, inviting humiliation. Gorahaha. Whitebeard Edward Newgate looked at Garp, who was standing on air and flying in the distant high altitude, and laughed loudly. Garp, This old man is here to confirm something. As long as you answer, I won't interfere anymore. You'll believe whatever I answer? Believe it. Humphrey, but I have no obligation to answer a pirate. Garp replied dismissively, showing no respect to the four emperors before him. He tilted his neck back and burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, no matter what you ask, I only have one way to answer, and that's with my fist. Hearing this, the crewmates of the Whitebeard pirates all showed anger. They felt that this bastard Garp showed no respect for their pops. Is that so? So it was fake after all. Edward Newgate suddenly said something that made Garp's face change drastically. The latter quickly turned his head to look at Sengoku behind him, frantically signaling with his gaze that he really hadn't said anything. This idiot. Sengoku, who was staring at Big Mom and had recovered from his great Buddha form, sighed helplessly, covering his head with his palm when he saw this. He had been tricked. Fortunately, the distance was quite far, so there was no need to worry about Whitebeard's voice being transmitted through the propaganda department's visual den mushi. Wuro, how can such a grand scene be without me? Just then, a mythical blue-scaled divine dragon descended from high altitude. He laughed wildly with a strong alcohol scent, diving towards the two large cargo ships at the very center. Chapter 101, Kaido who jumped into his own pit? Charlotte Linlin on the Queen Mama Chanter and Edward Newgate on the Moby Dick were both stunned for a moment, then their gazes towards Kaido became strange, as if they were looking at an idiot. Humphrey, this old man knew this kind of scene wouldn't be complete without a war maniac like you. Sengoku looked at the blue divine dragon flying towards him, stepping on blazing flame clouds, unsurprised. Once again, with a buzzing sound, he burst forth with golden light, transforming into a giant golden great Buddha. Shockwave. As soon as he finished speaking, he directly opened his massive right palm and slapped upwards. Immediately, an extremely powerful shockwave pushed out layers of air current, erupting outwards. That wind, ha! Kaido opened his dragon mouth and spat out massive wind blades to meet the incoming pale golden shockwave. Boom, as the two collided, the former was actually shattered one by one by the latter with overwhelming force, heavily striking the blue divine dragon's body, causing it to cry out in pain while being sent flying back. Too bad, you're not qualified to be arrogant in front of this old man. Suddenly, the golden great Buddha disappeared from the warship, then instantly appeared high in the sky, above the dragon. This was a demonstration of applying instant transmission and moonwalk from the six powers to their extreme, allowing Sengoku's transformed, seemingly clumsy body to exhibit explosive speed in combat. Boom, this time, the great Buddha didn't strike with palm force, but instead used a golden fist to heavily hammer the dragon's head. With a loud doing sound, Kaido was almost knocked senseless and plummeted heavily into the vast ocean below. If this were an ordinary ability user, they might sink to the seabed due to becoming powerless, unable to swim, and unable to breathe. But he was a fish fruit ability user. Although he would still feel a feeling of powerlessness, he could breathe normally. Coupled with his powerful haki and physique, it was enough for him to still move and use his ability for a short period. The blue divine dragon that Kaido had transformed into was seen using armament haki emission on his body surface, separating the touching seawater. Then, he rotated his long dragon body, spinning at high speed like a top in a circular motion. Immediately, a surging dragon twister formed, swirling up a large amount of seawater, while he himself flew out through the eye of the storm. From an external perspective, it looked as if a giant vortex suddenly appeared beneath the sea surface, then this vortex swelled up, growing higher and higher, turning into a water dragon twister connecting the water and the sky. Its appearance directly sent several surrounding pirate ships flying. Only the Marines' warships, relying on their large volume and tonnage, could barely keep their hulls stable. Boom, however, the water dragon twister appeared quickly and disappeared just as quickly. A single palm shockwave casually sent out by the golden great Buddha directly shattered it on the spot, adding several layers of water volume to the heavy rain between heaven and earth. Linlin. Whitebeard. Seeing the golden Buddha, resembling an arhat, charging towards him again, Kaido's mood immediately sank. He subconsciously looked towards his other two companions. In his opinion, this great sea battle should have been a joint effort between the three of them, with Big Moom and Whitebeard as the main force, and him assisting from the side. There was nothing he could do. His age was much younger compared to them, and his fruit had only just awakened a few days ago. His strength was definitely not as good as those two. He had rushed down earlier, driven by his drunkenness and impatience, only after seeing those two make their move, intending to create a central breakthrough and coordinate with the two outside. Now that he and Sengoku had been fighting for so long, why was there no movement from over there? You guys. But when Kaido's gaze swept over, he was shocked to find that the Queen Mama Chanter and the Moby Dick were leaving. This scene made his dragon eyeballs almost pop out. Whitebeard's side felt that they had already gotten their answer and there was no need to fight the Marines to the death. The key was that Garp and Sengoku were both there. If it weren't for them leading the fleet, he might have considered taking away those 2 ships of treasure. As for Charlotte Linlin, she wasn't interested in treasure at all. What was the point of having something you couldn't eat? She came here to vent her anger. The Tenman-Dage's engine move earlier had already caused considerable casualties to the Marines. So, as soon as she saw the Whitebeard pirates leaving, she immediately chose to return the way she came. To be honest, if Edward Newgate really wanted to have a great sea battle with the Marines, Big Moon would have been happy to join in. But since he left, she didn't want to face Garp and Sengoku's combined force simultaneously. As for Kaido, he was still too green right now and couldn't be considered a peak combat power. Mama, with us and the Whitebeard pirates retreating like this, Kaido won't be able to leave. The eldest son, Prospero, said with a playful smile, sticking out his long tongue. Charlotte Linlin was overjoyed at this moment and laughed loudly. Mama, it's not the first time he's been caught. He'll always find a way to get out himself. Being able to trick that foolish younger brother like this, she didn't know why, but her heart felt a little good. She wasn't worried at all that Kaido would just be finished like this. That guy had been caught so many times before, and each time he couldn't die and managed to escape. She figured this time would be no problem either. But Mama, based on what I know, Kaido's previous captures were before his ability awakening. Charlotte Katakuri looked seriously at the distant battlefield and said in a deep voice. The Marines didn't imprison him in Impel Down either, only in a branch here in the New World. And Kaido usually escapes by destroying the prison ship during transport, but this time... Big Moon was stunned after hearing these words, then secretly pondered. She didn't like thinking much, but she did care a little about that smelly younger brother, Kaido. That's right, if that kid gets caught this time, he'll be escorted by 10 warships led by Sengoku and Garp. The possibility of escaping during the journey is basically zero. So he'll be taken all the way to Mary Jo Eyes. No, he'll return to Manaford with the fleet. And next to Manaford is... After figuring it out, the big woman's face became very awkward. She felt like she had really screwed Kaido over this time. Immediately contact Whitebeard and ask if he's willing to team up with me to rescue him. Charlotte Linlin ordered, rubbing her slightly plump chin. Yes, Mama. The 5th son, Opera, who served as the Minister of Cream, dragged his body covered in sticky cream to make the contact. Soon, he ran back and weakly relayed the message from the other side. Whitebeard said he's not familiar with Kaido and that if we want to rescue him, we should go ourselves. Not familiar? Charlotte Linlin's head sprouted a large string of black lines, her eyes filled with anger. Wasn't that nonsense? They had known each other for decades, how could they not be familiar? What do we do now, Mama? If we go now, we'll have to face Sengoku and Garp simultaneously, as well as those 2 admiral candidates. The eldest son, Prospero, cautiously observed Big Moon's gloomy face and reminded her, because he didn't really want to take risks for Kaido and was afraid she might act impulsively. Fortunately, Charlotte Linlin wasn't that foolish, nor was she suffering from craving sickness. She still had enough rationality. She just sighed. Mama, let him be. I don't think he'll die. At most, he'll be locked up for a few years and find a way to get out. He's not the kind of man whose story ends so easily. Chapter 102, Meteor Volcano plus Yasukani no Magatama. The stunned Kaido immediately reacted, knowing this wasn't the time to dwell. Seeing Sengoku, manifested as the Golden Great Buddha, clap his hands towards him, he quickly changed from his beast form to his human beast form. Using his reduced body size and surging speed, he dodged the shockwave's bombardment and then desperately fled in another direction without looking back. He wasn't stupid either. With his current strength, he was simply no match for Sengoku. He had to find a way to escape. Damnable Linlin, Whitebeard, you guys just wait. Sooner or later, I'll settle this score with you. What the hell is this? They clearly made the first move, and as soon as I followed suit, they just left. The battle he imagined was a top-tier super free-for-all, not being ganged up on by top-tier combatants. Hey, Kaido, since you're here, why don't you come with this old man? However, while Kaido wanted to run, someone else wanted him to stay. Following a burst of fierce rushing sound and surging sonic boom, Garp instantly blocked his way, showing him 2 rows of neat white teeth. Old man, get lost. Kaido was furious, driven into a corner. Without hesitation, he fiercely smashed the Kanabo in his hand towards Garp. Streaks of bright purple lightning flickered across it. Thunder Bagua, boom, the dark fist, covered in armament hockey, directly exploded the air, blasting open a clearly visible ring of white mist. Carrying terrifying black and red electric current, it heavily hammered the Kanabo, blasting open ring after ring of rippling air current. The sea surface below boiled non-stop, as if a volcanic eruption was occurring. A loud doing sound of massive metal collision echoed throughout the entire area. Immediately after, the Kanabo completely shattered. The fist, glowing with black and red luster under the electric light, followed through and smashed onto Kaido's cheek. Instantly, his neck was stretched and twisted by this punch. The next second, his entire body spun like a top at high speed and flew back, directly crashing into and exploding a completely intact pirate ship, burying him in the debris. At this moment, the most terrified people were the pirates already in the battlefield and those about to join the combat. They had originally thought that Sengoku and Garp would naturally be handled by Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido of the Beasts. But within just a few minutes, the first two left, and the remaining one was still being severely beaten right before their eyes. So what now? Retreat. Quickly retreat. We're not fighting, we can't fight anymore. One after another, the pirate captains no longer thought about One Piece or becoming the Pirate King. They desperately wanted to escape back to their own ships and immediately withdraw from the combat. At once, pirate ships continuously turned their bows around. Among the pirates who had already run onto the warships and engaged in close combat with the Marines, some directly abandoned their companions, while others decisively jumped ship into the sea. In any case, when disaster strikes, everyone fends for themselves. The originally white-hot and brutal naval warfare instantly turned into a chaotic battle royale game. Scum, you have nowhere to escape. Sakazuki, who had already burned and melted countless pirates, scowled. Filled with killing intent, he looked at the fleeing pirate ships in the distance. His arms, which had been continuously maintaining his magma state, slowly rose. Drop after drop of magma dripped onto the deck, burning out scorch marks one after another. A strong smell of sulfur permeated the surrounding air. Me. T. Or. Volume. Ka. No. Bang 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 bang, with every bang sound, a massive scorching hot magma bullet would be shot out by him. And the firing speed was extremely astonishing. In just 10 odd seconds, he had already fired out hundreds of rounds. What is that? A pirate captain was originally urging his crewmates to speed up, but when he saw the countless, densely packed magma meteors in the air, each one as large as a house, he was completely frozen in shock. With his mouth open, he foolishly watched them get closer and closer. But while he stood there foolishly, others wouldn't. Some pirates carrying high bounties, relying on their decent strength, leaped up to meet the magma. Some activated their devil fruit ability, while others used the blades in their hands to unleash flying slash attacks. Each showed off their own methods, attempting to block the magma bullet attack for their own battleships. Charge. Block them. Let's do it together. The pirates from dozens of ships were completely driven to desperation. Gnashing their teeth, they used their strongest techniques to face this natural disaster, which was like a doomsday meteor shower. Whoosh, but someone seemed to feel that the despair they were facing was far from reaching its peak. Only to see Vice Admiral Kizaru once again transformed into specks of light particles, instantly appearing at high altitude hundreds of meters up. He's glowing again. The diamond-shaped golden flash wasn't as dazzling as before because the dark clouds were gone, but the terror it brought to the pirates was even greater. Ya. Sa. Ka. Ni. No. Ma. Ga. Ta. Ma. Another remark with a drawn-out, lazy-sounding tone came from Borsalino's mouth. The next moment, a massive amount of light beams, with a density far greater than the meteor volcano, covered a large area of the sea area. Red and fiery, hazy and dazzling. Massive magma mass falling all over the sky, combined with overwhelming laser beams, formed the most incredible firepower coverage net in this world. After all, Admiral Sengoku's previous order was to leave no survivors. While seeing such a terrifying and spectacular scene, countless royalty, nobility, civilians, marines, and pirates in various places in front of the projection screen burst into an uproar. This is the destructive power of top-tier Logia users and Admiral candidates. Especially the Fishman tribe and Merfolk tribe from Fishman Island. At this moment, the entire island was even more silent. At this moment, their hearts that underestimated human strength were completely shattered into pieces by this magma and flash. They were afraid. The prestige of the world government and the Marines began to skyrocket in the hearts of people of various races. Even him, far away in Mary Jo eyes, although still maintaining a calm expression on the surface, was actually watching with great interest. The scene was truly too awesome, far more spectacular and shocking than what was drawn in the anime. TSK, the awakening special moves of the Logia system, they really look spectacular. This stuff, one person is equivalent to a heavy artillery group. However, with his current strength, he could also see that whether it was Meteor Volcano or Yasukani no Magatama, while astonishing in terms of mass killing and destruction, they were not very useful in combat of the same level. Unless the opponent's state is already on their last leg, then it could serve as a magnificent send-off. The scene changes. When all the magma meteors and flash laser beams settled, and the Great Sea, which had been severely battered, gradually returned to calmness, people noticed there weren't many pirate ships left on the sea surface. Except for those too close to the warships who didn't have time to escape far, the remaining ships had now turned into sections of burning broken wood wreckage, slowly drifting, pushed by the sea waves. The battlefield was cleared. Oh, just as everyone was quietly enjoying the sudden silence, a loud and mournful dragon roar once again attracted countless gazes. Only to see Kaido over there had once again turned into a giant blue divine dragon, soaring straight into the sky. But everyone could see that he couldn't run away anymore. That golden great Buddha wearing the coat of justice and Vice Admiral Garp were already one above and one below, blocking all his escape routes. Unless he could break through one person's interception, the outcome was already decided. Regarding this point, Kaido actually knew in his heart that he was in for it this time. But even so, he didn't want to let the Marines off easy, he had to make them pay a sufficient price. To that end, his gaze looked towards those two large cargo ships carrying One Piece. Then, opening his dragon mouth full of blood, he condensed a mass of bright gunfire flash. Burrow Breath. Chapter 103, Thanks to Lord Long and his spear for the 55,000 tip. Boom, the majestic dragon heat breath surged out from his mouth. The scorching fire formed a long column, and the surrounding atmosphere was instantly evaporated into thick white smoke by the high temperature, heading straight towards the cargo ships at the center of the fleet. Didn't you want to protect them? Then I'll destroy them. Kaido's dragon eyes were filled with burning rage. He stared wide-eyed, waiting for a massive explosion to sink all the treasure into the seabed. He wanted to see the expressions of shock and despair on Garp and Sengoku's faces. However, Kaido didn't notice that Garp and Sengoku showed no signs of defending. Not even a ripple appeared in their gazes. Instead, they continued to clench their fists, swing their palms, and attack without hesitation. At that instant, a crimson radiance suddenly burst forth from one of the large cargo ships. Immediately after, the surrounding seawater was dyed a crimson color at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just as the surging Burrow Breath came crashing down, crimson sea waves actually sprayed up, forming a giant blood-red inverted bowl that covered the two large cargo ships, and collided with the scorching pillar of fire. Boom, Burrow Breath and the Blood Shield, one attacking and one defending, were locked in a stalemate in midair. The high temperature of the former was desperately burning the blood, evaporating large amounts of foul-smelling fresh red steam, while the latter, relying on the inexhaustible vast Great Sea, raced against time to replenish the shield's losses and thickness. How is this possible? Kaido was completely dumbfounded. He hadn't expected the Marines to be hiding another great expert. His heart completely plummeted into the abyss. On the other side, Charlotte Linland's mouth twitched as she watched this scene on the projection screen. She felt fortunate that she hadn't gone back to save him, otherwise, she would have been thrown into Impel Down along with Kaido. Ma'am, this ability looks like a Parimshia system awakening, but I haven't heard of any Parimshia system experts in the Marines. Next, as expected, under the gaze of thousands of audience members, Kaido was subjected to a powerful doubles attack by Sengoku and Garp. The former's Buddha palm held down his dragon head, while the latter's iron fist relentlessly hammered his chest. The shrill screams were continuous. The dignified captain of the Beast Pirates, a world-renowned expert, had such a miserable fate. Especially King, Queen, and the rest of the subordinates on Onigashima in Wano country, they were completely stunned watching this screen feed. They just stared blankly, not knowing what to do or say. It wasn't that Kaido had never been defeated before, but there was never a world broadcast back then. Should we go save the captain? A zone user wearing leather clothes asked weakly in a low voice. But upon hearing this, the crewmates present all lowered their heads, silently admiring the patterns on their shoes, completely silent. Go save him? In front of Sengoku and Garp, and that mysterious Parimshia system expert, how could they save him? They wouldn't dare go over and say, "Who do you think I am? Bring the ship closer." At this moment, King, as the second in command, spoke up. Are the people on this island also watching this live broadcast? Queen took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice. No, this nation basically has no contact with the outside world. Not even news crews can fly here. Only we specifically pay attention to outside movements. That's good. King took 2 steps forward, his icy gaze sweeping over all the crewmates. He said coldly. From now on, discussing this matter is forbidden, and you are not allowed to reveal it to the outside. If I hear even a single word, don't blame me for being ruthless. Is that clear? Yes, it's clear. It's clear. This group of uniform zone users nodded repeatedly, desperately making assurances. No one dared to raise an objection to King's order. "So, what do we do next?" Queen asked, exhaling a puff of white smoke beside him. "Wait." King walked over and directly crushed the poor visual Den Mushi. "Kaido will find a way to get out. We just need to wait for the captain's return. Before that, completely seal off Wano country's connection with the outside world, even more thoroughly than before. Especially, we cannot let Kazuki Oden know about this matter, otherwise, we will all die." As he spoke, his gaze turned towards Wano country. Hearing this, everyone's heart tightened. They immediately understood the importance of secrecy. Although that Oden was performing a ridiculous naked dance, his combat power was no laughing matter. Even if King and Queen attacked together, they would not be his match. On the Marine Fleet side, Kaido had already been handcuffed with seastone handcuffs and leg cuffs, and then locked in a prison cell inside a warship's cabin. Garp was sitting on a chair, eating senbai while reading a newspaper. Seeing this, Kaido inside gave up hope. As for the citizens of various nations in the outside world, with the conclusion of this earth-shattering Great Sea battle, the live broadcast also temporarily came to an end, because it would take several days to return from here to the G1 branch. However, the officials from the propaganda department also said that a world broadcast would be initiated again then, allowing everyone to personally see the boxes containing the treasure being moved to Holy Land Marijois, and all the treasure piled up there for everyone to see, thus proving that the great pirate treasure One Piece had truly fallen into the hands of the world government. As for why they were heading to G1, it was because these warships were directly under the G1 branch. Trying to transfer 10 warships from Marine headquarters would require passing through the seabed 10,000 meters below, which was too troublesome. However, although the live broadcast screen feed disappeared, the influence of this matter spread as the audience dispersed. In royal palaces, ports, taverns, schools, plazas, and even within cabins, everyone was frantically discussing topics about the Marines, about One Piece, about Whitebeard, Big Mom, and about Kaido. Basically, no one doubted the authenticity of this treasure anymore. Didn't they see so many pirates fighting fiercely over it? This left the former crewmates of the Roger pirates in various places in the world with bitter and helpless expressions. They could only watch as their captain's plan from his lifetime was shattered like this, and then tilt their heads back and drain the golden liquid in their wine glasses in one gulp. Truly, drowning one's sorrows in alcohol only makes them worse. Over at Holy Land Marijois, maids naturally took away the visual Den Mushi that had closed its eyes. It wasn't easy for it, after all, it had been projecting images with its eyes open the whole time, not even daring to blink. However, Im's fun didn't end there. Look, new entertainment was unfolding on the court. Mihawk, holding Black Blade, Yoru, and Giant, holding Konpira, stood on their respective half-courts, facing each other from a distance. The sharp gazes unique to sword masters collided in midair. This sparring match was proposed by the latter. At the time, Stussy beside them was so frightened her face turned pale, and she quickly moved several meters away from Giant. Although their relationship was good after spending a few days together, this didn't mean their friendship was very deep. She wasn't willing to anger the celestial dragons along with the other party. Fortunately, Lord Saint Nerona didn't blame Giant for anything, and didn't even ask for Mihawk's opinion, directly agreeing on behalf of the other party. Because he wanted to watch, they had to fight. Mihawk didn't say anything either. He stood up and was the first to walk onto the court, then said to Giant. "A sword master trained by Marine headquarters, huh? I haven't fought one of those before. Come, let me see what you've got." Chapter 104, Mihawk's Shock. Outside the court, Stussy's curious gaze went back and forth between Giant and Mihawk. Because there are few sword masters in Cypher Pol 9 Agent. After all, they are teams specifically responsible for assassination, and carrying a long saber with them would be too troublesome. Thus, they are all martial arts experts skilled in the 6 powers. This is one of the joys of crossing over. Im sat on a lounge chair, casually picking up the wine glass of decanted red wine the maid had prepared. Swirling it, he waited for both sides to make a move. As a One Piece fan, being able to see many scenes that don't exist in the original plot was truly joyful. When the standoff atmosphere in the court reached its peak, Giant's expression suddenly turned sharp, bursting forth with an invisible but truly existing sharp aura. Suddenly, the famous sword Konpira in her hand trembled. She darted forward, transforming into a straight, dazzling white blade light, stabbing towards Mihawk with a speed that seemed incredible to the maids. Facing such chilling pressure, Mihawk remained expressionless. The blade edge of Black Blade, Yoru, like a black cross, slashed diagonally. With a crisp clang, he easily blocked Konpira's attack, then relied entirely on his own strength to shake off the latter. Without any fancy moves, he swept horizontally, seemingly intent on cutting the long-legged beauty before him in two with one strike. Instant transmission. Giant shifted her feet, instantly turning into an afterimage and disappearing from her original spot. The next second, she appeared behind Mihawk. But just as she swung her blade, it was blocked by the hilt of Black Blade, Yoru, which he had already predicted. Warm-up is over, be careful. Following Mihawk's reminder, Giant felt the hairs on her body stand on end. She felt that the aura on the former's body had changed, becoming extremely oppressive. Becoming serious, Mihawk held the huge black blade, Yoru. He turned around and swung it out, instantly tearing through the air and unleashing sharp energy like a storm. So fast. Giant's pupil constricted. She could see that while these energy looked like blade wind, each one was a tangible blade. On the contrary, the black blade, Yoru that could be seen relatively clearly was actually an afterimage. Because both sides were just sparring, they tacitly agreed not to use flying/attack. This meant Mihawk was displaying the ultimate swordsmanship as a sword master. Since that's the case, facing such fierce offense, Giant did not show the slightest fear. Instead, she became even more excited. This was the opponent she had longed for. The next moment, Konpira in her hand instantly transformed into countless blade lights, directly meeting the blade storm that glowed with a faint green light. This woman with the strongest ambition in her heart chose to meet speed with speed, showing no weakness whatsoever because of her gender. Instead, she was far tougher, more resolute, and fearless than most men. Countless blade lights swirled like fallen leaves, condensing into streaks of killing intent, like a surging great river of snow-white light raging horizontally. The two continuously intersected, clashing relentlessly. Blade light collided with blade light and then shattered. One man and one woman, two young sword masters, stepped on the court symbolizing the Grand Line. Their figures had disappeared within layer after layer of blade light storm. But the continuous clanging sound echoed throughout the entire Pangaea castle, even attracting the vigilance and attention of the distant Holy Land garrison. Stussy watched in surprise at the court completely enveloped by blade light. She hadn't expected that Giant, who always played tennis with her, would be so strong when she picked up a blade and became serious. Not bad, not bad, both of their blades are very steady. Beside him, Im praised in his heart. The combat of these two seemed full of killing intent and the scene was intense, but the combat range was tightly controlled within the court. It was purely a competition of strength, speed, reaction, and swordsmanship within a small space. This is what is called sparring and communication. However, from his perspective, he could also see that with such high-intensity confrontation, Giant, this Marine Rear Admiral, wouldn't be able to last much longer. Because her blade lacked spirit, and compared to Mihawk, she clearly lacked combat experience. Her basic abilities like strength, speed, and reaction also had a significant gap. Especially in terms of strength, Giant's Konpira could only temporarily keep up with Mihawk in terms of speed. But every time the blade edges collided, her hand would show a tremor so faint it was almost invisible. A bit interesting, huh, this future Momouzagi. Im's ripple eyes, hidden beneath black cosmetic contact lenses, easily passed through the layer after layer of dazzling white blade light, observing Giant who was inside, gritting her teeth and struggling to persevere. However, he had no interest in Giant, because she didn't meet his requirements for harem candidates. With his current identity, status, and strength, he definitely couldn't pick just anyone. Although he had crossed over into this body only a little over 2 years ago, after inheriting all the memories, emotions, and strength, he had a different kind of feeling than ordinary people towards Mihawk, this child he had watched grow up. Simply put, the original Im treated Mihawk as a son to raise. It was similar for the current Im, but more so, he regarded him as a candidate for the next generation of 5 elders. About an hour later, with a clang, all the blade light storm gradually subsided. One could see a long saber fly out of the court, embedding itself in the lush green turf. It was precisely Konpira. Her master, Giant, was panting heavily, covered in sweat, and with her beautiful hair disheveled, kneeling on one knee on the half-court representing the first half of the Grand Line. She glared at Mihawk with a face full of unwillingness. Your blade is too rigid, lacking flexibility and showing rigidity everywhere. The most important point is, although you have stepped into the threshold of Sword Dao, it's obvious you are very lost about the direction afterwards. So, your sword heart is not firm enough, and your hockey naturally won't be strong either. But Mihawk sternly pointed out the opponent's flaws one by one. His attitude was very serious, but he showed no politeness whatsoever. In these years, he had visited famous swordsmanship masters in various sea areas. Although he himself hadn't stepped into the ranks of great swordsmen, providing guidance to Giant was still no problem. That's all for now, Mihawk, come with me. Im stood up and placed the half-drunk red wine onto the tray in the maid's hand, then slowly walked into the interior of Pangaea Castle. Following behind, Mihawk put Black Blade, Yoru back on his back and followed. He completely ignored Giant's stubborn gaze as she bit her lip, which also made Stussy, who walked over to help the ladder up, secretly mutter to herself. He's truly a stubborn block. Clear the area for 1 hour. Returning to the room of authority, which was full of silver gray ground and dense, Im instructed the maid guarding there. Yes. The maid bowed respectfully and quickly led the other maids away. Clearing the area meant that during this period of time, no matter what matter occurred, no one was allowed to approach the room of authority. Following behind, Mihawk silently walked over. His sixth sense was faintly telling him what major matter would happen next. Here is fine. The two arrived near the piano. Im looked up and saw the vast starry sky and the moon. This place would simulate night even if it was daytime outside. Mihawk remained silent. He just stopped his steps and waited. His personality was just like this, and Im also happened to like this kind of personality of his. The next moment, he directly opened the star chart, then placed the first random small stargate that was activated before it a spot 5 meters in front of him. This is what I want to show you, a teleportation gate leading to other worlds. As soon as these words came out, Mihawk's golden yellow ripple eyes, called Hawkeyes by the world, immediately trembled. Chapter 105, The 5 Elders Who Dare Not Be Presumptuous. An hour later, the stargate was gone. Watching Mihawk's dumbfounded retreating figure, Im revealed a satisfied smile, but immediately habitually restrained it, returning to his calm and indifferent expression. It seems my explanation had a good effect. The reason he brought Mihawk to see the stargate this time was primarily because the latter was qualified. After all, he was one of the next 5 elders Im had his eyes on, so he could naturally be among the first to know about the stargate. Secondly, it was to test the prepared wording on him, in preparation for summoning the 5 elders tonight to initially disclose the existence of the stargate. First, let Cypher Paul officially begin selecting the first batch of intelligence personnel to enter the first stargate. Originally, Im had planned to discuss this matter with the 5 elders after this reverie ended, but the longer it dragged on, the more his curiosity grew. Whether it was dangerous or not, they could completely send a few Cypher Paul agent in to explore first, right? Also, he always felt a sense of destiny, as if being urged to quickly move towards the Sea of Stars and take the first step towards the myriad world's world government. Since that's the case, let's begin. On the other side, Mihawk, with a heavy heart, walked out of Pangaea Castle with a cool stride and encountered Jian, who had already washed up and tidied her appearance. It was clear from her look that she was waiting for him. The former stopped and looked over calmly, asking with a cool gaze what was the matter. I want to become the world's strongest great swordsman, so please teach me. Jian's gaze was firm as she sincerely bowed and said. Mihawk said indifferently. I'm not even a great swordsman myself. You've came to the wrong person. There was another sentence he didn't say. He himself needed to return to Mary Joyce to find Lord Im to break through to great swordsman, so where would he have the time to teach a woman he wasn't familiar with? Moreover, being the world's strongest was no longer his ambition. With so many worlds, what was the point of being the strongest in just one world? If he was going to be the strongest, he would be the strongest great swordsman in the multiverse. Then please sparring with me once a week, I beg you. Jian did not straighten up, continuing to bow as she requested very seriously. Mihawk looked at her bowing figure and was silent for a moment, then stepped past Jian again, leaving behind a sentence that surprised the latter. 6 in the morning, 1 hour. Thank you very much. Jian stood up, clenching her fists tightly, her gaze burning as she watched Mihawk's departing figure, secretly vowing. I must become stronger, and then defeat you. Stussy, hidden in the darkness, quietly watched this scene and shook her shake head in incomprehension, while also asking herself internally, what did she want to do? At night, close to midnight. That's enough for today. Inside the room of authority, Im put down the unremarkable mto he held, whose name he couldn't even be bothered to remember. Across from him, Mihawk, pale-faced and panting heavily, barely supporting his weary body with black blade, Yoru, struggled to lift his somewhat blurry gaze, staring silently at the former's departing figure for a long time. Mihawk could guess that Im was going to see the 5 elders, and it was likely related to that stargate. It was just a pity that he wouldn't be able to go to another world for a while. In the afternoon, he had proposed going as part of the first batch to explore, but Im had flatly refused. Although the latter didn't explain much, Mihawk also knew this was out of concern for him, as the safety of the first batch of personnel was completely unknown. I must reach great swordsman as soon as possible. Just as Lord said before, there must be astonishing sword Dao genius in other worlds as well. I'm still far from that now. Greetings, Lord Im. The 5 individuals who ostensibly held the highest authority in the world all half-knelt in the cold main hall, offering their highest reverence to the master of the empty throne, who was high above. When the atmosphere became quiet, Im's voice, as cold as a winter wind, reached the 5 elders' ears. The Grand Line is a sea area where geomagnetism, celestial phenomena, sea current, and air current are extremely chaotic, where ordinary navigation technology and navigation experience are unreliable, where people cannot determine their own or their destination's position, and where they are constantly threatened by extreme natural disaster and giant sea beast. The five elders listened quietly. They believed that Lord Im saying these things must have his reasons. If the small Grand Line is like this, then the cosmic star sea, which contains billions upon billions of stars, and is even so vast that its height is unknown, must be even more chaotic and dangerous. This is what I thought and contemplated 700 years ago. Hearing this, the five elders lowered their heads and exchanged glances with their peripheral vision, because they didn't understand what Lord meant. One day, I accidentally noticed a log pose. It can record the magnetism between island and island, used to guide the correct direction to the next island. Then, do star and star also have invisible magnetism? The five people half kneeling on the ground trembled slightly. Although they found it extremely unbelievable, a preposterous idea indeed rippled in their hearts as Im spoke. After that, I spent 400 years sensing the internal and external magnetism of this planet, and then 300 years sensing the star in the universe, searching for similar magnetic field information. After hearing this passage, the five elders could no longer suppress their shock. They subconsciously raised their heads, gaping in awe at the figure who seemed like a god or a demon. What? Sensing the magnetism of this planet? What? And sensing the magnetism of other star in the universe? If he could do such a matter, how terrifying must his observation hockey be? But Im seemed not to have seen their loss of composure, continuing to speak unhurriedly. 2 years ago, I finally locked onto a star that emitted similar magnetism to my planet, and connected a magnetic field route to create an interstellar wormhole that could be used for instant travel. I call it the Stargate. His voice fell, but the five elders were now completely stunned, foolishly half kneeling on the ground, at a loss, or rather, digesting the massive information volume. Im did not rush them, but granted them some time. For a moment, the dark empty hall returned to silence, until St. Topman Warcurry, who was in the very center and in charge of the political affairs department, hesitantly asked. Lord, then. This star? Stargate. Without seeing any action from Im on the gold red throne, about 15 meters away from the five elders, in front of the high stairway covered with a layer of luxurious red carpet. First, a point of faint blue starlight appeared, then rapidly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into a slowly rotating Milky Way star cluster. Following that, the star cluster continued to expand, forming a rectangular stargate 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. However, the scattered starlight on it quickly faded automatically, revealing a screen feed of green mountains, clear water, and blue sky, just like a virtual image projected by a visual den mushy. Cough cough cough. So, your meaning is, the opposite side of the star. Stargate, that is, the scenery we are seeing inside now, is another world? Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn, holding Shodai Kaitetsu and in charge of all military power, appeared very excited, even his entire body was visibly trembling, his face flushed with excitement. Yes. A simple yes spoken lightly caused the five people below the stairway to bite their teeth hard, because they dared not shout and yell to vent their overwhelming excitement in front of Lord Im. That would be too presumptuous, so they had to endure. Chapter 106, The Five Elders' Important Meeting. Room of Authority. Im, who had returned to the tree house, let out a long sigh. He completely relaxed and plopped down on the sofa, then took a gulp of top-tier red wine worth over 100 million Bailey outside. To be honest, after revealing the existence of the Stargate to the five elders, he felt the pressure in his heart release. This was mainly because he had been tangled and annoyed by it before. Now it was fine. How to conquer and develop another world was no longer his concern. In the future, top talents from all walks of life would slowly join in to handle it. Anyway, the control of the Stargate was in his hands. But this way, the world government, and the entire Sea Star civilization are about to embark on the long journey of conquering the multiverse. This is destined to be a journey without end, or rather, one that only ends with destruction. Whether this process takes 100 years, 1,000 years, or even just 1 year, it's all unknown. Im murmured with a complex mood. In fact, he had also thought about sealing the Stargate forever, focusing on cleaning up the internal affairs of the pirate planet, and being the strongest behind-the-scenes expert for a lifetime. But what was the difference between that and closing the country off? When experts from outside the universe descended one day, what would they do? 24 years later, space pirates would descend upon the moon above their heads. Although their strength didn't seem strong. Instead of being attacked at their doorstep, it was better to muster the courage and use the convenience of the Stargate to strengthen their own strength and the influence of the world government. Fight outwards. Inside the room of authority, the five elders, who had returned, fell into a long silence. Everyone was thinking about everything they had just seen and heard, as well as future matters. You speak first. According to Lord Imu's order, the first batch of people to enter the Stargate will be your cipher Paul. Saint Topman Warcurry was still responsible for opening and presiding over the meeting. Saint Shepherd Jupiter said in a deep voice. Investigate the ecology, environment, and climate of another world. If there is a civilization, we also need to probe their system, population, ability, technology, and army combat power. To be honest, although the difficulty is great, we have many intelligence agents. The key is to control the number of people dispatched in this first batch to avoid attracting too much attention. My initial thought is to keep it within 10 people. As for the specific candidates, I need some time to screen them. Okay, as soon as you are ready, send the people in immediately. We need to understand the general situation of that world. Saint Topman Warcurry nodded, then looked at Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn, who was wearing a kimono, and asked. According to Lord Imu's divine oracle, future military combat against other worlds will gradually be centered around the army. Therefore, the combat power of his troops must be increased as soon as possible. Do you have any thoughts? The latter calmly said. What thoughts could I have? Just execute Lord Imu's divine oracle. I think there's no problem. I just need to manage the army's re-equipping. Your political affairs department needs to approve it quickly, and we'll order the materials quickly and send them to the factory for manufacturing. According to Im's order, the army's breech-loading repeating flintlocks would all be replaced with automatic rifles from North Blue in the future, and they would be equipped with tanks and other armored vehicles. If they were to do this, they would need the manufacturing plant under the military department to produce the weapons, but ordering the materials for manufacturing required approval from the political affairs department. For example, if the Marines wanted to add 5 warships, they would need to apply for approval from a department in the political affairs department. Only after approval could they order them from Water 7. Of course, they could also directly order ready-made weapons from various islands and countries in North Blue, but that also required prior approval from the political affairs department before they could start spending the military budget. Although it seemed redundant, this was a necessary political measure, belonging to procedural justice. I don't believe you can't see it. Lord Imu wants to use the army to counterbalance the Marines. Saint Topman Warcurry said with a grin. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn pursed his lips and said. Humphrey, I think what Lord Imu said is perfectly fine. The worlds we encounter in the future may not all be 90% ocean like our world. Ground combat will naturally require the army to go up. Could the Marines charge with warships? Indeed, I feel that the army will become increasingly important over time, while the Marines can only stay on the homeland for most of the time. St. Marcus Mars pondered and offered his opinion. That's why Lord Imu said he would find time to transfer officers from the Marines who are suitable for the army. Hey, before, we were always troubled by the Marines being too strong. Now it's fine, everything is easily resolved. Lord Imu's wisdom is beyond our reach. Just follow his lead. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn maintained his usual firm and fanatical attitude. Although the world on the other side of the Stargate is important, we also have many matters on our hands here on the homeland, slaves, pirates, heavenly tribute. Lord Imu also attaches great importance to these. We must quickly deal with these troubles and not let them become stumbling blocks to our conquest of the stars and multiverse. Saint Topman Warcurry's words received unanimous agreement from the other 4 present. Before, they had doubts about these changes, but after learning about the Stargate and the multiverse, they no longer had any unnecessary thoughts. To fight outwards, they must first resolve their worries at home. The slave issue can be gradually dealt with after the upcoming reverie. However, the matter of the heavenly tribute reform can only wait until the next reverie 4 years from now. We cannot wait until then to dispatch personnel into the Stargate, and those pirates are also a big trouble. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn said so. Then let's deal with the first alien world while cleaning up our own issues. If the latter is too dangerous, at most we'll sacrifice a batch of Cypher Pol agents. Didn't Lord Imu say that his control over the Stargate is absolute and he can close it at any time? Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn held Shodai Kaitetsu and spoke extremely cold words forcefully. However, Saint Shepherd Jupiter also nodded in agreement. For this group of people, whether it was Cypher Pol or the Marines, they were all tools, all for the permanent rule of the celestial dragons. Oh, speaking of the heavenly tribute reform, the fleet sent to bring back administrative talent and financial talent from various islands should be returning soon. When they arrive, immediately fill them into the various departments that have been set up. Let the Celestial Tribute Collection and Management Committee be responsible for the research on the heavenly tribute issue. St. Topman Warcurry thought for a few seconds before recalling the name of this department. This was because, according to Lord Imu's reform plan, the Political Affairs Department had recently added many new departments, but there were almost no people working in them. Weren't they all waiting? Hey, your Political Affairs Department will have people soon, so you don't need to worry. But I don't know where to find people for the reform on my judiciary side. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn looked quite troubled. Legal talent are too specialized, and that Ministry of Police Affairs also needs a lot of personnel. Although Lord's plan mentions that some Marines from the Four Blues branch can be transferred to us, the supervisors are the key. You're still complaining? According to the plan, most of the Marine branches in the Four Seas will become your police stations in the future. You should be secretly happy. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn snorted, truly unable to stand the other party's attitude of taking advantage while still complaining. Lord Imu's meaning was very clear: in the future, the Marines would be responsible for matters at sea, while the investigation and arrest of criminals on various islands in each country would be the responsibility of the Ministry of Police Affairs under the judiciary. Of course, if a criminal escaped to sea, the Ministry of Police Affairs could not interfere arbitrarily. At most they could cooperate and exchange intelligence. Clearly, this was another way to counterbalance the future authority of the Marines. Fortunately, these things would take time and would definitely not see major changes within at least a year or two. Dear great readers, little author couldn't withstand your various impatient urging, so I chose to reveal the Stargate to the 5 elders in advance. You know, according to the original outline, this plot would have been placed on the day the reverie began, and then people would be officially sent into another world after a few more chapters. How about it? Are you moved, my wise and incomparable great readers? Little author looks at you weakly, but yes, this kind of thing won't happen very often in the future. Little author feels that I should still write steadily according to my own ideas. It's better than the story collapsing, right? Please give this book some patience, and also give little author some patience. This book is very long, you know, this is the Multiverse. Regarding the content about play tennis, I have also received feedback from some readers. Little author apologizes for this here, because when I was writing about tennis ball, I was very excitement. Because I myself really like reading fan fiction with a Prince of Tennis theme, and I also particularly like watching anime like Pirate. I always wondered if it would be more exciting if these people used various abilities to play tennis than Prince of Tennis itself, so I wrote it into this book. This is just a little bit of little author's own personal preference. Can I ask the great readers to understand? Of course, I promise not to write too much of it, please, please. Regarding the issue of future female characters, I can only say that the requirements in this area of the book are relatively strict. Ordinary people cannot enter. Otherwise, if I take in every beauty I see, it will become a harem protagonist, right? Everyone is a man. Please put more attention on the protagonist's career and strength, thank you. Finally, Chapter 107, The Economist's Ecstasy. Every evening, thick, heavy clouds and mist gather in the sky over the sea's surface. The sunset can only find tiny gaps to shoot out streaks of crimson sunset glow. Perhaps influenced by the sky outside the window, the cabin, despite being lit by electric light, still appeared somewhat dim. This was an official's dedicated sea ship flying the world government flag. Far ahead, a massive red line wall stood towering into the clouds and mist, its peak completely out of sight. At this moment, over a dozen ships identical to it were sailing on the nearby sea surface. They all came from various kingdoms or city islands across different sea areas. Thump thump thump, inside the cabin, John, with coffee-colored curly hair and many freckles on his face, wearing a plain bright yellow suit, gently knocked on a door. Please come in. Teacher, those people said we'll arrive in 40 minutes. John said as he entered the room, closing the door behind him. He looked respectfully at Professor Smith. All right, I understand. The latter, sitting in a chair, looked up and nodded kindly. He then stood up, put the cap back on his fountain pen, and began tidying the text materials on the desk. Let me help you, teacher. John quickly walked over to help organize. Professor Smith smiled at this and didn't refuse, instead asking. I heard the world government didn't originally call for you, you volunteered. Can you tell me why? John showed a shy smile and said. There are mainly 2 reasons. One is that I don't want to be separated from you, teacher, as I haven't finished your classes yet. The other is, as you know, I'm very interested in currency. I thought coming here this time would allow me to observe the issuance of Bailey up close. Both of them hailed from the kingdom of Cockhardy in the North Blue. It was a large island with a land area about half the size of the Alabasta kingdom. It was also the most modernized and prosperous nation in the entire North Blue in recent times. Gentlemen in suits and leather boots and ladies in long dresses and high heels were seen everywhere. It also boasted self-sufficient production industry, universities, and banks. If a transmigrator's starting point were here, They might think they had transmigrated to 18th century London, England. The prosperous economy, coupled with modernized military equipment, gave their army the firepower to easily defend against pirate raids. Its national strength was also among the top tier of all affiliated countries. Naturally, it became a key target for the world government's requisition of administration and financial talent this time, especially the Cambridge King's University in this kingdom, which was of utmost importance. Professor Smith was the most renowned economist and great economic planner at that university. This professor, already nearing 60, spent nearly 40 years building the entire financial industry for the Kingdom of Cockerney and, based on the nation's economic foundation and environmental resources at the time, pointed out many construction goals and development plans. So, when the world government officials' ship arrived at this kingdom and requested the King of Great Britain to requisition Professor Smith to serve in the finance department, there was some resistance. However, just as the atmosphere between the two sides became serious, the professor voluntarily agreed. Is that so? It seems you're like me. I also want to see more economic entities from a higher position. Professor Smith said with a smile. I thought before that using a lifetime's worth of learning for just one nation was too narrow and too regrettable. I didn't expect them to actually come looking. I always thought the world government didn't pay much attention to economic matters. After tidying the text materials, the two took their respective leather bags and left the room, heading to the spacious main cabin to gather with others. Looking around, there were easily 100 or 200 people. Although their attire, skin color, pupil, and hairstyle varied, like a group of people from different eras inexplicably gathered together, every single person's eyes revealed wisdom and intellectuality. These individuals were all elites, luminaries, and scholars in the fields of politics and economy, possessing varying degrees of fame in their respective kingdoms. However, unless they were from the same kingdom, due to communication difficulties between islands, even though they were all active in the same industry field, they were completely strangers to each other. This also led to the large gathering having no noisy conversation, only the sound of breathing. This display of high-quality behavior made the maritime affairs officers responsible for management very relaxed and satisfied. About 50 minutes later, Professor Smith, along with John and over 100 scholars from the Kingdom of Cockerney, followed the crowd down the deck and officially stepped onto this town, known as Redport because of its proximity to the Red Line. So many people, so many ships. Are they all scholars? John excitedly scanned left and right, seeing ships flying the world government flag docked at the port. And from each ship, a group of men and women exuding an intellectual aura disembarked. That should be the case. Professor Smith nodded, narrowing his eyes and looking up at the Red Line, which was so close and so massive that it instilled fear in one's heart. Soon, a group of officials from the Ministry of Finance arrived and stated that they would be leading the way from now on. However, Professor Smith was called out separately and, along with 9 other unfamiliar scholars, became the first group to ride the bubble ship. Professor Smith and the others then walked in line through the prosperous town inside, and then took turns riding the bubble ship, slowly ascending along the wall of the Red Line to the very top. This process alone took over half an hour, as the height of the Red Line was several thousand meters. It seems impossible to get everyone up before tonight. Notify them to prepare enough rooms. The official riding the bubble ship with Professor Smith and the others said into a transponder snail. Yes, Vice Minister. You are the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Finance? Smith waited for the other party to put the transponder snail back in his pocket before asking. The latter turned around and smiled warmly. Yes, my name is Jalif. I'll have to ask for Professor Smith's guidance in the future. Our Ministry of Finance has collected all of your previous writings. That is my honor. However, why would a Vice Minister like yourself personally come to lead the way? The eyes of the other 9 scholars also showed confusion. Vice Minister Jalif smiled and said, Ordinary people certainly aren't qualified for me to come, but you are all scholars recognized by our Ministry of Finance as the most top tier, and you will also be members of the Celestial Tribute Collection and Management Committee. So, I volunteered to be the guide to get acquainted with everyone in advance. Smith and the 10 economists subconsciously pondered the keywords they heard and asked. So our next job is related to the Heavenly Tribute. What do we need to do? Reform the Heavenly Tribute. Change the current unified collection system to a proportional allocation charge. What you need to do is provide us with a quota table based on the payment capacity, productivity, population, and other economic foundations of all affiliated countries. Upon hearing Vice Minister Jalif's words, Professor Smith and the 10 economists were all shaken in their hearts, their eyes lighting up. They had long seen that the current Heavenly Tribute collection system was very unreasonable, yet it hadn't been improved for hundreds of years. And now, the world government was finally going to change it, and they were specifically looking for them to be personally responsible for the reform. Surprise. Professor Smith, in particular, felt ecstasy. He felt that his lifetime of learning could finally be fully utilized on the world stage. The direction of this reform is, large nations pay more, small nations pay less, wealthy nations pay more, poor nations pay less, or can even pay nothing. But we will plan economic development for them so that even the poor nations who cannot afford the heavenly tribute after the reform will one day be able to pay it. There are still 4 years until the next reverie. It's not short, but it's not long either. Please give it your all. Yes. The 10 most top-tier economists in the world, with an average age of around 45, were flushed with excitement. Chapter 108, Can't Even Stand Up. Dark, cold, silent. This underground space named Infinite Hell remained like a dead land, leaving people feeling numb and despairing. Although there was no torture, no hunger, and no punishment, for the great figures here, feeling the strength constantly draining from their bodies, and the lifespan and time being wasted, the mental torment was also considerable. Phew. That bastard finally shut up, my ears have been about to explode lately. Shiki angrily raised his hands, which were bound by sea-stone handcuffs, and rubbed his ears covered by thick golden hair. These past few days, Bullet had been shouting and making a racket almost all day. No matter how much the other prisoners, terribly bothered by him, cursed him, he would only quiet down after falling asleep. This was also directly related to those useless jailers completely ignoring the situation. Seriously, if all the cell doors were opened one day, Bullet would definitely be beaten to death by them working together. Just as everyone was enjoying this brief moment of quiet, Magellan silently appeared outside Bullet's prison cell. Come out, someone wants to see you. Magellan's voice wasn't loud, but Bullet, who looked like he was sound asleep inside, instantly opened his eyes, his face showing uncontrollable surprise. He quickly flipped over and stood up. Finally. At the same time, Magellan outside took out a key, inserted it into the lock, and opened the sea-stone cell door. However, their movements were noticed by Crocodile in the neighboring cell. Magellan, why can't he go out? The sand crocodile angrily walked to the cell door and questioned through gritted teeth. None of your business, go back to sleep. After speaking, Magellan expressionlessly watched Bullet walk out of the prison cell. After closing the cell door again, he escorted the ecstatic Bullet away. Tell me. Why? What he can do for you, I, Crocodile, can do too. His shouts, filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred, only provoked Bullet's arrogant laughter and mockery. Ha ha ha, what good is your strength now? Just obediently squat in there, damn it. Crocodile clenched his fists tightly in anger, his eyes red as he stared at Bullet's figure gradually disappearing from sight. At the same time, he frantically thought about Bullet's use to the world government in his mind. Could it be that shouting loudly can really get you released? On Bullet's side, he followed Magellan and once again took the large elevator to the level above the sea. Although it was late at night, it was still brightly lit here, with constant screams. New prisoners, trembling with fear, lined up one by one, slowly approaching the large pot filled with boiling water at the deepest part, waiting for their baptism. But none of this concerned Bullet. At this moment, he had taken off his prison uniform and changed back into the clothing he wore before coming in. He walked out of Impel Down's gate in a cheerful mood. Magellan then handed him over to a guy wearing a white mask, white suit, and white coat. The moment he sensed the latter's aura, Bullet's gaze suddenly narrowed. His sixth sense was frantically warning him of the other party's danger. The person has been handed over to you, I'm heading back now. After speaking, Magellan took out the key and handed it to the jailer next to him, who then unlocked Bullet's handcuffs and leg cuffs. The latter waited for his hands and feet to regain freedom, and found that the green collar on his neck was gone. A smile immediately appeared. He pointed to the empty ground beneath his feet and sneered mockingly, shouldn't my shadow be returned to me now? When it's time to return it, it will naturally be returned to you. Magellan turned around and returned to Impel Down without a care. He no longer paid attention to Bullet's darkening expression. Let's go, Lord wants to see you. At this moment, the white-clothed person reminded him. Okay. Bullet suppressed the anger in his heart and showed a seemingly terrifying smile. While following the other party towards a world government official ship, he asked with a smile, you must be the hidden expert of the world government, right? How many more like you are there? However, the white-clothed person completely ignored him. This made the former frown, and he had no choice but to shut his mouth. 2 hours later, Bullet arrived at Holy Land Marie-Joise and strode into Pangaea Castle. Finally, he stood before the gate of the empty hall. Along the way, he had considered finding an opportunity to escape. Although he had no shadow beneath his feet and couldn't walk in the sunlight, it was night now. But every time he was about to make a move, the white-clothed person would release astonishing killing intent, forcing Bullet to abandon the idea. There was nothing he could do, his strength was inferior, and he didn't want to die. Because in his opinion, anyone who died was a weakling. He was a man who wanted to become the strongest. Moreover, Bullet also wanted to see the true strongest person in the world in his heart. Go in. After the white-clothed person said this, he paid no further attention, turned around and left without another word, quickly disappearing at the end of the corridor. Only Bullet was left, silently examining the gate before him. Finally, his gaze settled, and he still chose to push it open. Upon entering, the first thing he saw was the three-tiered platform and the stairs covered with a red carpet. He didn't pay attention to the gate that automatically closed behind him. His gaze continued to move upward, passing the second tier. He then saw the third tier, where 20 various weapons were embedded. Finally, he saw the gold-red throne, which resembled a spire. Oh, so that's the legendary empty throne that no one can sit on, representing peace and equality? It's really a nice spot. Bullet grinned as he looked at the empty throne, thinking in his heart, perhaps one day when he possessed the strongest strength in the world, he could find time to try sitting on it. Boom, what's going on? Suddenly, he only felt the air everywhere around him rioting, boiling, and squeezing in. A completely irresistible weight suddenly pressed down on every muscle. Even his consciousness began to blur. Thump, without any surprise, just like Doflamingo before him. Bullet fell heavily to his knees on the ground, his head pressed tightly against the bright red carpet. No, no. How can I kneel? How can I lower my head? Bullet's face turned red, his teeth clenched tightly, his eyes wide to the point of almost splitting open. His expression was frantic as he exerted all his strength, trying to push back the oppressive air around him, and then, stand up. Is this conqueror's hockey? No, it's more like armament hockey. No, no, this is the purest hockey. The deterrence of conquerors, the emission of armament, and the perception of observation hockey are perfectly fused, no longer having obvious separation from each other. But how is this possible? Compared to Doflamingo, Bullet's aptitude and talent in combat and hockey were indeed stronger. Even though his emotions were in a frenzy, his subconscious sensed the essence of this invisible pressure. It was precisely because he knew the essence that he was even more shocked. The three types of hockey could indeed be used simultaneously, but that was through coordination, not fusion. Furthermore, the quality and quantity of this hockey had reached an unbelievable level. It completely surpassed the level of all peak combat power users he had seen so far, including Roger, Garp, and others. Suddenly, a voice, utterly cold, arrogant to the bone, treating his looking down on all beings as a matter of course, as if everything in the world was within his grasp, echoed through the main hall. You can't even stand up, how will you punch me, Douglas Barrett? Chapter 109, Bullet, I'll defeat Garp within 5 years and show you. Hearing such utterly sarcastic words, Bullet's blood vessels felt like they were about to burst. Veins bulged on his neck, and his eyes were extremely red. Instantly, a dark blue aura erupted from his huge and muscular body, mixed with streaks of flickering lightning. But they were suppressed back less than 1 centimeter from his body's surface and could only cling tightly to the skin surface, struggling to resist. This only made Bullet's breathing slightly more comfortable. He still couldn't move a single finger. Cough cough, you are truly, cough cough cough, the real strongest. Bullet's forehead was pressed against the red carpet as he gritted his teeth and asked word by word, but his body was still desperately exerting force, trying to stand up. At the same time, he roared madly in his heart, at least let me lift my head, damn it. Actually, if he just obediently knelt properly and lowered his head, the heavy pressure on his body would lessen a bit, and he wouldn't have to be so painful. But that would represent complete submission. 10 years. Im did not answer the other party's question but spoke cold words to himself. Within 10 years, you can challenge Garp once a year. If you can defeat him within 10 years, I will grant you 1 chance to challenge me. Before that, obey the world government's orders. Then what if I win? What if I win against you? Bullet gritted his teeth and roared out. Then you are the strongest in the world. Ha. Ha, good. Good, I accept this promise. Bullet grinned, revealing the most insane smile, and shouted fiercely. But I only obey your orders, others, don't even think about ordering me. This huge roar, filled with extreme unwillingness, suddenly erupted along with the dark blue conqueror's hockey on his body. They swept across the entire main hall like rolling sea waves, continuously impacting the 3-tiered platform in front, but the latter remained as unshakable as Mount Tai. It was also at this moment, Bullet suddenly found that the heavy pressure on his body had disappeared. This made him stand up immediately. Then, with red eyes, he fiercely raised his head and looked towards the empty throne. But found that it was already empty. Only the bright and cold moonlight shone there. Is this the true strongest person in the world? Ha 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 ha, it's powerful, truly powerful. A strange scene appeared. The anger and madness on Bullet's face quickly subsided. Then, looking at the empty throne, he tilted his head back and laughed wildly. Because he felt he had seen the strongest strength in the world. And deeply remembered the strength of this power with his body. Then he would sooner or later also possess such strength. At this moment, whether it was Roger or Garp, were no longer the peak he ultimately wanted to surpass in his heart, but just a relatively distant halfway stairway. 10 years? Humphrey, I'll defeat Garp within 5 years and show you. Bullet turned around full of confidence, looked towards the automatically opening gate outside, and the familiar white shadow slowly appearing, and sneered, "Yo, long time no see. According to the 5 elders' orders, I will now take you to the army headquarters and tell you what you need to do next." That white-clothed person's tone was still so cold and ruthless. "Army?" Bullet frowned and said in surprise. "I thought I'd have to dress like you. As you are now, you are not worthy." "You." Bullet was furious, but due to the other party's strength, he could only endure it. It was also at this moment, under the moonlight, he suddenly found that the shadow under his feet had returned. "Hey, aren't you afraid I'll just run off? 5 elders' orders, you only have one chance. Once caught by us, you can be killed on the spot. You can gamble with your one and only life." Hearing this, Bullet's mouth twitched slightly. He had just witnessed the limit of strength, and it was when his blood was boiling. He really didn't want to die just like this. The two walked out of the empty hall one after another, then walked out of Pangaea Castle, bearing the starlight filling the sky above and at huge full moon, and quickly headed towards the so-called army headquarters. At the same time, inside the room of authority, Bullet is joining the army. "What military rank are you preparing to give him?" St. Topman Warcurry looked at St. Ethenbrun Venusjiro beside him and asked. The latter asked back expressionlessly. "Besides Vice Admiral, what other military rank could it be? Then when he reaches that level, what will you do then?" "I remember the army has never established the position of Admiral." St. Jaga Ursha Saturn asked. "The current army, because it is only responsible for guarding the Red Line, the bridge on the sea, and some secret bases, does not require excessively high combat power. So there is no army admiral, and the marshal of the 3 forces manages the army's high-level affairs. It seems you haven't carefully read the content about the military in the reform plan." St. Ethenbrun Venusjiro glanced at the other party expressionlessly. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn said indifferently. "I am least interested in military matters. Humphrey, whether you're interested or not, Lord Amu's plan, you should read carefully and remember it in your heart." Anger flashed in the former's eyes. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn frowned. He was very disgusted with the other party's attitude and felt this person was overly fanatical. But among the many departments of the world government, the influence of the judiciary and Inai's lobby has always been the weakest. Naturally, the 5 elders responsible for this aspect became the one with the lower status among the 5. So he now urgently hopes that the Ministry of Police Affairs can be built up quickly. When its scale is large, then the judiciary will also have its own armed influence. As for now, he can only continue to endure. Fortunately, St. Ethenbrun Venusjiro only said this one sentence and no longer paid attention to him, saying in a deep voice. "According to Lord Amu's reform plan, in the future, the army will also establish an establishment of 3 admirals, and there will be an army marshal." "What about the marshal of the 3 forces?" "Cancelled. The fleet admiral and army marshal will both be incorporated into the future military and political department, directly discussing the highest-level military conference with this old man." "But where are the people?" St. Topman Warcurry shook his head and smiled. "If it weren't for the sudden appearance of Sakazuki and the other 2 on the marine side, they wouldn't even have 3 admirals by now. This old man thinks your army's marshal and admirals will also have to remain vacant for a short time. It is mentioned in the plan that if necessary in the future, the army is allowed to conduct a world military draft, and even transfer officers from the marines who are more suitable for the army." St. Ethenbrun Venusjiro said lightly. "World military draft? Transfer marines to the army?" The other 4 looked at each other and thought to themselves. This is another move by Lord Amu to check and balance the marines. In the future, the army's influence will become stronger and stronger, reaching a level where it can contend with the marines. So your political affairs department needs to hurry up. St. Topman Warcurry was full of doubt, looking at St. Ethenbrun Venusjiro, not understanding why, and asked. "What military matter of yours should we hurry up with?" The latter held Shodai Kaitetsu, closed his eyes, and said calmly. "In the future, the army's scale will expand, and its influence will also become stronger. This old man feels that the current army headquarters is no longer suitable and should hurry up and rebuild one. At least it should be similar to Maniford. Building this, isn't that the responsibility of your political affairs department's construction department?" Chapter 110, Mr. Tom's Gratitude. A few days later. "Teacher Tom, Hurry up, the live broadcast has started. Flam excitedly lay on the sofa, calling out loudly to Fishman Tom, who had just entered the room. It was a bright, spacious, tidy, and cozy living room with sunlight streaming in through the windows, and a faint floral scent lingered in the air. Behind him was a high-definition virtual projection cast into the air by a visual den mushi, showing 7 warships, covered in traces of battle, slowly sailing into the vast port of the G1 branch. As for why it is 8 ships, that was because 2 ships needed to continue escorting the cargo ship to Redport. Although the distance between them was almost face-to-face, there was still a gap, so to emphasize importance, warships were needed to escort them to the end. The warship holding Kaido was currently receiving service from a coating craftsman at the G1 base. After the bubble coating was applied, Vice Admiral Garp would escort him through Fishman Island under the seabed to impel down in the first half of the Grand Line. At this time, the public broadcast facing the entire world had started again. People who were following this matter, whether nobility or royalty, regardless of gender or age, all turned on their visual den mushi. Civilians who couldn't afford a visual den mushi flocked to the local plaza or open spaces, gathering in dense crowds, and for a time, the noise was deafening. Everyone was discussing how much treasure the One Piece contained. And some battle power fans were arguing heatedly about whether the Marine Admiral or the 4 Emperors was stronger. The newly promoted candidate Admiral Vice Admiral Akanyu, Vice Admiral Kizaru, and Vice Admiral Aokiji, who hadn't appeared but was still known to people, also became topics of conversation. To be honest, the previous Super Great Sea Battle had truly opened the perspective of people in the countries of each sea and indirectly heavily intimidated the royalty of various countries and the pirates in various places. Especially the pirates of the 4 seas, who before this, if they had a little strength, would look down on everyone, acting as if they were an expert in the world, and then excitedly rush towards Reverse Mountain. But now, basically 80% of the pirates have given up the idea of advancing into the Grand Line. Otherwise, what if they were treated as a key target as soon as they entered and attracted a Marine Admiral? Wouldn't that be purely seeking death? At the same time, the world's people gained stronger confidence and reliance on the Marine strength, and naturally became more in awe and obedient to the world government. Keep your voice down. You're so noisy, Bagaki. Iceberg, whose long blue-purple hair was wrapped in a white cloth, put down his black tea and shouted angrily. When he first met Flam years ago, he thought the name sounded a bit strange, so he arbitrarily changed it to Frankie. Later, as their relationship warmed up, it turned into Bagaki during their lively arguments. What did you say, Bagayama? Flam was also furious and immediately turned his face to curse back. Fortunately, at this moment, Mermaid Kokoro secretary walked over and used her slender finger to poke the former's forehead, pushing him back. Alright, come, this is the small cream cake I just made, try it. As she spoke, she placed a plate of small cream cakes on the coffee table, then looked at Tom, who was sitting on the sofa, and asked with a smile. How is it? Is work going smoothly? It's still stuck on the problem of the wheels derailing from the track floating in the sea. That's a truly resounding big problem, ha 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 ha. Shipwright Tom burst into laughter, laughing heartily, tears even sprang from his eyes. I can't help you with that kind of matter. Secretary Kokoro stood behind the sofa, looking at the screen feed of the warship cargo ship that had arrived at Redport, and said with a smile. I just see that this place is becoming more and more impressive. It really changes every day. In just a few months, you can't see any trace of Scrap Island anymore. That's right. If I hadn't been living here all this time, I really might not have been able to recognize the place. It's too clean, too wide, and there are so many barracks. Flam ate the cream cake in big bites, nodding repeatedly with his mouth full of fresh, fragrant cream. Even the usually steady Iceberg said. Although this Bagaki never says anything good, what the world government has done this time is indeed good. Now, not only are all the shipyards operating normally, but the residents on the island also have more smiles on their faces. Since those Marines have been stationed here, there have been no more pirate attacks. Flam was angry again. What did you say, Bagayama? Ha 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 ha, this old man also had some prejudice against the world government before. Now it seems they are also a truly resounding government. It was all a misunderstanding. Mr. Tom laughed again, tears streaming down his face. But seriously, with them here, we just need to fully devote ourselves to research and development work. This is truly a great help. Let's lift our perspective from this cozy living room upwards, and we can see that Scrap Island, originally located next to Water 7, has been completely renovated. To prevent the style here from clashing with Water 7, the people from the construction department used large stones to build spacious, modern factory buildings and laid out solid stone roads. considering that this place will not only be a base for manufacturing the sea train in the future but also a place for sea train repairs and adjustments. So they built a huge train station along the coast that could accommodate 7 sea train tracks leading to the major routes of the Grand Line. Although it looks empty inside now, once the sea train is developed, various facilities and shunting equipment will be continuously filled in. It's easy to imagine how lively it will be then. Oh, right, I called Fishman Island yesterday. I originally just wanted to greet my family, but I didn't expect that big changes have happened there recently too, and it's also related to the world government. Kokoro slapped the back of her head and relayed what she had heard, her tone full of excitement and happiness. Finally, she smiled happily and said, "Will our sea train be able to go to Sabati Archipelago in the future? Let's go see it together then, okay?" Sabati Archipelago is the last island in the first half of the Grand Line, so the sea train will naturally go there. Mr. Tom nodded, then sighed with emotion. However, what this old man admires is that the world government not only sent back all our compatriots who became slaves but also established a marine branch on Fishman Island and allowed the Sea King Army to be stationed and patrol in Sabati Archipelago. This is truly a resounding benevolent governance. It seems that equal life between us fishmen and humans is really about to arrive. Seeing the two adults talking about serious matters, Iceberg and Flam stopped arguing. Instead, they watched the screen feed of wooden boxes being unloaded from the cargo ship during the live broadcast while listening attentively. It seems we need to speed up the sea train's development. The sooner it's built, the sooner it can connect various islands, bringing people closer together. Perhaps someday more fishmen and mermaids will come to Water 7 to visit. That would be my contribution as a member of the Fishman tribe to the world government's benevolence and good deeds, and a token of my gratitude. After speaking, Tom's massive body stood up. He no longer watched the live broadcast. He wasn't interested in the Pirate King's treasure anyway, and now, with his heart surging, he wanted to return to work immediately. Flam and Iceberg exchanged glances, then turned their heads away somewhat unhappily, but they tacitly stood up and followed him. Even though the former had been shouting loudly about wanting to watch One Piece just moments before. Chapter 111, Red-Haired Shanks Dumbfounded. Crash, 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 large amounts of gold and jewels, made into various round coins, bars, or inlaid in crowns, swords, necklaces, and rings, poured out from overturned wooden boxes. Nearby, loaders used their large shovels to continuously scoop up the overflowing treasure and pile it back inside. This was a large open space specifically cleared out within the Holy Land Marijois, from which Pangaea Castle could be seen in the distance. At this moment, 10 government officials holding visual denmushi were broadcasting the process of the One Piece being piled up little by little from various angles to countless citizens in various places in the world. To ensure the sense of shock, they even dispatched an ability user who had eaten the bird fruit to film from the air. Silence. Everyone in front of the projection screens fell into a dead silence, each person staring dumbfounded at the unbelievably vast amount of gold and jewels on the screen feed. Nearly 2 hours had passed, and loaders were still holding up large wooden boxes and continuously pouring out more jewels. At this point, a dazzling golden hill of jewels had formed on the screen feed. Yet, even so, there seemed to be no sign of it ending. However, a small number of people vaguely sensed that something was wrong. They felt that the current amount of treasure had already exceeded the carrying capacity of 2 large cargo ships, but they weren't entirely sure. In fact, they were right. The 5 elders had long thought that while the treasure from 2 ships was a lot, it wasn't quite presentable enough to show to the whole world. But they couldn't really hide all the excessively exaggerated treasure in Laugh-Tale in the New World. How many cargo ships would it take to transport it there? Would that still serve the purpose of secrecy? Also, what if there were too many cargo ships and something went wrong when the Marines transported them back? Leaving aside other things, if the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Mom pirates had truly joined forces with Kaido and launched a massive attack, how many cargo ships could they protect? Although the world government had a vast fortune, they wouldn't throw most of their treasure into the sea. So they came up with a plan. Only transport the treasure from 2 ships there and then transport it back. This way, even if something unexpected happened and it became sea drift, the loss wouldn't be too great. Then, when they public broadcast it for the world to see, they would simply pull out more treasure from the Holy Land treasury nearby, but it wouldn't appear on camera. Wouldn't that be completely foolproof? Even if someone stood up later to point out the inconsistencies, that little influence wouldn't be worth mentioning. They only needed to shock the majority of the citizens. So, how much treasure were the 5 elders prepared to release? Lord Amu, who was currently enjoying himself with the citizens in the treehouse between the moon and watching the live broadcast, naturally knew the answer to this question. The specific value in money wasn't mentioned because the astronomical extent was difficult to describe with numbers. In short, The meaning of those 5 people was to use gold and jewels to pile up a golden mountain on the other side of the river that was as tall as Pangaea Castle. It is said that even this was less than half of the treasury, and didn't include mto, devil fruits, banknotes, etc. The foundation accumulated over 800 years was truly terrifying. Speaking of treasure, I remember there were 3 other great treasure. Captain John's treasure, a former Rocks Pirates member, the Jewel Iceberg located on the extreme ice continent, and the Golden City Shandoran on Upper Yard in Sky Island. Im stroked his chin and pondered inwardly. Captain John's treasure, I remember marine scholars speculated that Buggy found it and used it as capital to establish the so-called pirate dispatch company, Buggy Delivery. But now everything has changed, and finding it again won't be easy. Thinking of this, he shifted his thoughts from that to the other 2 places. Extreme ice continent, Chinjiao's pointed head was flattened by Garp's punch 6 years ago, so the treasure inside is still intact. It shouldn't be hard to find, the key is how to open it. Im's first thought was to send Garp there. After all, if Chinjiao's pointed head could crack the ice layer, then Garp's stronger fist could too. But thinking about it again, it seemed a bit unreliable. Firstly, there was his personality, and secondly, he felt that opening the ice layer required skill. At the very least, it needed to be just enough to open the ice layer above the treasure. If he used too much force and smashed it directly, wouldn't everything fall down? Right, he could send out Kiji. He is an ice fruit ability user. Who could be more professional than him at controlling ice? Let him go quietly retrieve the treasure, and then restore the ice layer perfectly. He believed that when Chen Zhao went to see it next time, his expression should be quite spectacular. It just so happens that the marine branch base on Fishman Island hasn't been built yet. After he goes to the extreme ice continent and comes back, I believe the base will also be completed. The timing works out. Im made his decision and was about to pick up the transponder snail on the coffee table to call the 5 elders. As for Shandoran on Sky Island, he planned to go personally. He would just treat it as a trip to Sky Island for tourism and bring back some specialty product along the way. That wasn't too much, was it? Pu-upper-upperu. Unexpectedly, just as he reached out his hand, the transponder snail itself started ringing. He picked up the handset and heard it say, "Lord Imu, Figurlin Shanks has been sent to the Figurlin family's manor. That Buggy is still on his way to Punk Hazard." "Understood. Keep an eye on him, don't let that kid run off." "Yes, Lord." With a plop, the transponder snail closed its eyes and fell back into slumber. Im put the handset back and took a sip of red wine from his wine glass. Since transmigrating, he didn't know if it was due to the influence of his predecessor, but he particularly liked drinking this sweet red wine. Perhaps it was also because the kind he drank was the best, so the taste was especially delicious. Shanks. To be honest, he wanted to make use of this person. After all, he was a talent, someone with the potential of 4 emperors, and he himself had celestial dragon blood. But the problem was that this kid was adopted by the Roger Pirates from a young age, and his mind and body were completely polluted. He was already 15 years old now, his 3 views had long been formed, and it would be difficult to re-educate him. However, Roger was dead, and the Roger Pirates had disbanded, which was a good thing. Forget it, let's just keep him for now. Thinking carefully, his only use is in combat power. The future world government will not lack this. From this perspective, he is even less useful than Buggy. Im coldly decided to temporarily ignore Shanks. As for whether he would completely forget about him later, leading to him being raised into a useless person, he didn't think about it. Honestly, if he became useless, so be it. Couldn't he afford to support one person? Unless one day, this Shanks could wash heart, completely accept his identity as a celestial dragon, and be willing to contribute forever to the authority of the celestial dragons, then he could consider cultivating him. Perhaps I can let Mihawk meet him as an elite celestial dragon. If they can become friends like in the original work, that wouldn't be bad. Indeed, as a transmigrator, he still had a good impression of the extremely cool red-haired uncle. If he could help him a little, he would. If even Mihawk couldn't make Shanks turn over a new leaf, then so be it. On the other side, in a luxury villa within a manor belonging to the Figurlin family in the Celestial Dragon exclusive residential area in the Land of the Gods, Shanks sat on the sofa with a dark expression, staring blankly at the clothing neatly arranged on the coffee table. Chapter 112, The Day the Legend of One Piece Ends. The mountain of jewels and gold on the open ground opposite Pangaea Castle piled higher and higher, truly nearing the top of the castle, but eventually, the 5 elders gave the order to stop. This was because they felt that allowing its height to be level with or even surpass the castles would be a form of blasphemy and insult to Lord Imu. But even so, this vast gold mountain and pearl sea completely shocked the entire world. Yes, the world itself. If you don't have a clear concept of it, Then imagine standing in front of a 100-story building. Then replace it with a pile of gold and treasure, and expand its footprint by more than 10 times. A true mountain of gold. At this moment, the Southeast Sea, South Blue, West Blue, North Blue, the first half of the Grand Line, the New World, and Fishman Island 10,000 meters below the seabed all fell silent. The world seemed to quiet down, leaving only the sound of waves crashing on the great sea. What kind of joke is this? Buggy, watching the live broadcast from inside the cabin, was only 15 years old at the time. But his appearance was exactly the same as in the future. He roared as he looked at the mountain of gold on the screen feed. If we had that much treasure, why the hell would we be pirates? Buggy's eyes turned red, greedily staring at the countless gold and jewels. He couldn't possibly find this much treasure even if he searched his whole life, could he? Where are these guys taking me? He clutched his head frantically, looking extremely distressed. Just before, when he was still wandering around the East Blue, those cool men in black suddenly appeared before him, knocked him out without a word, and when he woke up, he was in this ship. The place you're going is Punk Hazard, the science unit. Oh no, now it's the secret base of the Academy of Science. A man in black pushed open the door and walked in, saying with a smile, "Why are you sending me there?" Buggy saw that there was finally someone he could have communication with, and quickly stood up to ask. "Because we saw your talent in researching gunpowder, so we will teach you more professional knowledge there. From now on, you will seriously be a scientist in the field of gunpowder." Buggy was stunned, his mouth agape, unsure of what to say. He could only stammer in confusion. How did you guys know that I've been researching gunpowder recently? I only had this idea last week? How ridiculous was this? How outrageous. He only just became interested last week, and he hadn't even gathered all the research materials. And the world government came to tell him he had great talent in this area. And they even used forceful means to capture him, with the goal of sending him to a place to study? The man in black opposite him was also taken aback, blinking his eyes. He didn't know what was going on either. What should he do now? Should he say something? Well, you should know Shanks, right? You two were on the same ship before. Right, he was the one who told us that you are particularly talented in this area. The man in black coughed twice and managed to find an excuse. Shanks. Buggy instantly became furious, even the white teeth in his mouth turned into sharp fangs, and his anger blazed fiercely. He didn't expect to be screwed over by that bastard again. Before, it was also because of him that he accidentally ate the chop-chop fruit and became a landlubber, losing countless treasures on the seabed. Where is he now? Cough cough, Shanks, we found out he is of the Figrillan family bloodline of the Celestial Dragons, so he has already been sent to Mary Joyce? Buggy's face stiffened, 3 golden big question marks appeared above his head, and he shouted in disbelief. What did you say? That bastard Shanks is a Celestial Dragon. The man in black nodded seriously and said. Yes. So please be careful with your words from now on. If you don't want to be arrested at Punk Hazard for disrespecting a Celestial Dragon. Why him? Do you have evidence? Buggy asked through gritted teeth, his tone carrying irrepressible envy. A Celestial Dragon. That's a Celestial Dragon. Endless wealth, supreme status, and marine admirals protecting them at all times. Oh God, he wanted to be one too. Cough cough, although I don't know the details, as far as I know, there is no Red Nose family among the Celestial Dragon clans. The man in black glanced at Buggy's reputation and said expressionlessly. Who are you calling Red Nose? Buggy's angry roar instantly exploded, even penetrating the layers of wooden walls and echoing throughout the entire cabin, startling even the seagulls flying over the great sea. Outside. As the sun began to slowly set, the public broadcast to the world was shut off. It was believed that an afternoon's time was enough for the world's citizens to watch their fill. At this moment, the world government officials were beginning to move the treasure back into the treasury. From the current progress, they would have to stay up late and work until tomorrow morning. But the higher-ups wouldn't care about these small matters. Next is the reverie. St. Topman Warcurry sat in the center of the sofa in the most authoritative posture, saying in a deep voice. St. Marcus Mars asked. Indeed. Has the town for settling those slaves been built? Previously, they considered that after the reverie agenda item was passed, they couldn't release all the slaves in Mary Joyce at once, as many of them were mentally numb or held strong hatred towards the world government. So they discussed selecting about 10,000 people to be released through the world broadcast, while the rest would be temporarily placed under house arrest somewhere on the Red Line, and psychologists would be dispatched to see if they could recover. As for those whose hatred was truly too deep, they could only be dealt with secretly. Almost. The construction department's report says that the infrastructure will be completed in 2 months at most, and normal life will definitely not be a problem. St. Topman Warcurry nodded. Speaking of which, the construction department has quite a few projects to be responsible for recently. The South Bird Breeding Base on Jaya Island, the Sea Train Manufacturing Plant in Water 7, the Medical Academy and World Hospital in Drum Kingdom, the Marine Branch on Fishman Island, the renovation of Thriller Bark, the expansion of the World Government Headquarters, and the construction of the Army Headquarters. Speaking of the last one, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, and said expressionlessly, "These projects are being carried out simultaneously, which has somewhat exceeded the construction department's capacity. So they can only temporarily recruit another batch of artisans from other kingdoms. It's good to be busy." The latter replied lightly. Meanwhile, news coos, carrying small red envelopes filled with hot new papers, flapped their wings and flew to various places in the world. The content inside was about the public broadcast of the One Piece matter today. Although thanks to the transponder snail's super strong, zero-delay live broadcast ability, people in various places in the world basically already knew about this matter. But as newspaper agencies, for such an important matter, an event that could even go down in history, they had to record it in their own newspaper, even if it meant publishing an extra edition urgently. Otherwise, that would be unprofessional, not professional. Therefore, the front page headline of this extra edition newspaper was titled, "The Day the Legend of One Piece Ends." Chapter 113, Vegapunk Gets Spoiled. While the world was in an uproar over One Piece and the Pirate King, there was one place that remained calm. In the New World Sea area, in the New World, on Punk Hazard. At this time, there had been no poison gas incident here, nor had there been the battle between Akainu and Okiji for the position of Admiral. There were no volcanoes, magma, iceberg, or blizzards on the island, and no large lake in the center. Looking around, instead, there were dense green jungles everywhere, and traces of prehistoric creatures and modern animals could be seen. It was like the little garden in the first half of the Grand Line, but the area was much larger than the former, and the species were much richer. The research institute base of the former Marine Science Unit, now the Academy of Science, stood tall in this vast jungle. Because its height was far above the trees, a tower-like building could be seen at a glance. At the same time, to prevent wild creatures from entering, a partition wall and gate made of steel were built around the research institute, covered with electric fences and pipes. Soldiers wearing army uniforms stood guard and patrolled everywhere, holding firearms. The atmosphere of the entire research institute was extremely solemn, serious, and earnest amidst the occasional roars of beasts. The fusion of zone-type devil fruits with objects. In a research room filled with monitors, a middle-aged man, less than 2 meters tall but with an unusually thick and long head like a large radish, was wearing a loose white coat. His glasses-clad eyes scanned the contents of the document in his hand, line by line. He was the current dean of the Academy of Science and the director of the Devil Fruit Research Institute, Vegapunk. Interesting. This files was escorted 3 hours ago by members of Cypher Pol 6 agent in a password box. He had originally thought it was a professional report from other researchers. But as he read on, he found the content was rather disorganized and not rigorous at all. There was no experimental data, only various conjectures. Yet, these seemingly messy conjectures firmly held his eyes. The content at the very beginning was about embedding sea stone in the ship bottom of a warship, using the aura of the Great Sea it emits to deceive the senses of sea kings, allowing the warship to avoid sea king attacks to the greatest extent possible and voyage smoothly through the calm belt. In the original timeline, this was a technology he would only conceive of nearly 20 years later. Seeing it in advance naturally piqued his interest. However, this alone was not enough to make Vegapunk take it seriously. The key was the later content about the origin, essence, and cycle mechanism of devil fruits, their relationship with lineage factors, the vortex language similar to ability encoding, and the idea of making substance eat devil fruits. These were the reasons he had been immersed for so long. These were also things he would research in the future, and now it was essentially spoiling his past self. Zone-type devil fruits inherently contain lineage factors. This is a matter I only recently noticed. As for the will similar to beast soul within them, I hadn't thought of that. But where did the world government get these? Vegapunk frowned, deep in thought. He didn't believe there were researchers who had delved deeper into the fields of lineage factors and devil fruits than himself. Lineage factors were something he had discovered first. Vegapunk continued to turn the page, finding that the content afterward had nothing to do with devil fruits again. Things like paddle wheels installed on both sides of warships, power plants utilizing sunlight, wind power, and geothermal energy, and various conjectures about long-range missiles, satellites, and the internet. Looking at the last page, it turned out to be a drawing. On it was a relatively large humanoid robot, spitting out bright yellow laser beams. Various explanations and a rough manufacturing process were attached next to it. This rough process was a bit too rough, but Vegapunk still keenly noticed the key words. Shape memory alloy with inherent lineage factors, the human heart. To be honest, for a moment, even he, who was said to possess wisdom 500 years beyond that of humans, was somewhat confused. Let me think. Zone-type devil fruits inherently contain lineage factors, so making metal eat them means the metal gains lineage factors, and this is shape memory alloy. Vegapunk felt something wasn't quite right. He felt that this shape memory alloy shouldn't be so easy to manufacture, but there was one point he agreed with. That is, making objects eat zone-type devil fruits might really be possible. He was preparing to start experiments to see. For a scientist, no matter how outlandish an idea, experimentation can reveal whether it is feasible or not. Although this entire document is filled with various conjectures lacking rigor, it does point me in a relatively clear research direction. This also made Vegapunk's mood more complex. He was now a little worried whether the world government had found a researcher who could replace him. It wasn't that he had a great fondness for the world government, after all, he was essentially kidnapped and brought here by force. However, he had to admit that research here was completely uninhibited. Whether it was money, equipment, or research materials, he could basically get as much as he wanted. Devil fruits, treasures worth at least 100 million Bailey outside, could be transferred to him 5 or 6 at any time if he needed them. Huh, there's more? Just as he was about to put away the documents, Vegapunk was surprised to find there was another file bag in the password box. He casually opened it and took it out, and his pupil immediately trembled. The Climate Improvement Plan for Future Country Baltimore. After reading the contents of the plan, his hands trembled slightly. The world government was actually preparing to help him solve the extreme cold climate of his hometown. According to the plan, if needed, they could even dispatch the current Admiral candidate Vice Admiral Akainu and Vice Admiral Kizaru, using their Logia system awakening to forcibly change the island climate of future kingdom. But if they did that, the ice and snow on the island would melt rapidly due to the sudden warming, leading to widespread flooding. Therefore, they could consider relocating the residents beforehand and, after Baltimore Island's environment stabilizes, dispatch the construction department to build the necessary building facilities. Vegapunk understood the world government's meaning. They were willing to use their greatest financial resources, manpower, technology, and even high-level combat power for his hometown, but how exactly to do it still required his personal planning. After all, he was the top expert in this area. Of course, if he needed help from scholars in related fields, that was also fine. He just needed to make a list of the talent he wanted. Silence, a long silence. Vegapunk sat in his chair looking at the document in his hand. He was very touched, but his rationality was also telling him that this was the world government buying his loyalty. So the question was, could the happy future of his hometown buy his loyalty? Dr. Vegapunk, the Cypher Pol 6 agent ship has entered the port. They brought Buggy, the trainee from the former Roger Pirates. This was a report from the monitoring room. Buggy, is that the kid who is said to have a lot of talent in explosives? First, lead him to the guest room to rest, give him a day to familiarize himself with the environment here, and arrange a teacher for him the day after tomorrow. To be honest, Vegapunk wasn't really interested in explosives, nor did he have time to personally teach Buggy. He just wanted to continue immersing himself in his research on devil fruits. Yes. Also, transfer 2 zone-type devil fruits and 2 renowned swords to me. I need them for experiments. Yes. Chapter 114, The Biochemical Research Institute's New Mission. Sure. Teacher, did you call for me? Caesar, wearing a white coat, walked into Professor Freese's research room with a slight hunch. This place was naturally the 5.5th floor of Impel Down, currently the secret base of the Biochemical Research Institute directly under the World Government Academy of Sciences. At this time, after accelerated renovation by the construction department, the environment here had undergone drastic changes. The silver-white ground, walls, and ceiling were full of metallic luster, paired with electric gates. The laboratory was filled with bottles and jars containing eerie green liquid, holding various strange creature organs. Coupled with the purple lighting, the place exuded an atmosphere full of evil and terror. To be honest, just looking from the inside, it was impossible to tell that this place was located inside the great undersea prison. Yes, an order just came from Mary Joyce. They want us to send someone to Area RL 1556 to assist the construction department in building a biosafety station with isolation, sterilization, and disinfection functions, and also to bring 30 sets of advanced hazmat suits. Hearing this, the over 3-meter-tall Caesar had a look of surprise. RL? I remember that's the red line, isn't it? Why build a biosafety station there? Does someone dare to release a bioweapon there? Also, what do they need hazmat suits for? Hearing his most excellent student's triple question, Professor Freeze rubbed his temples with a headache and sighed. I don't know either. Don't you know the world government's temper? Since they didn't explain, it means we shouldn't know. So don't ask around carelessly. Remember this point, it can save your life. Alright. Caesar was unhappy. Be serious after you get there. Although you're only 16, you know how to build a biosafety station, right? Professor Freeze raised his head and asked. Caesar nodded repeatedly with excitement, laughing. Yes, I just happen to want to go up and take a look around. Hey, be steady after you get there. Absolutely do not run around everywhere. Every word you say must be carefully considered. It's best not to say anything unrelated to the work. Professor Freeze continued to earnestly instruct him. Sure, I understand, teacher. Caesar chuckled, only feeling that his teacher was making a fuss over nothing, talking as if the red line was extremely dangerous. Professor Freeze saw his carefree appearance and knew he hadn't taken his words to heart at all. He helplessly shook head, then handed over a set of files from the desk. Oh, right, take a look at this. What is this? Caesar took it curiously and started reading. As he read, he softly muttered the keywords to himself, saying, Land of Death, a biotoxic gas that invades the human body through skin contact, causing full body paralysis while generating a petrified shell on the body surface to restrict action. Seeing this, his eyes lit up, and then his gaze continued downwards. Mummy virus, invades the human body through skin contact, causing symptoms of high fever throughout the body, rapidly evaporating human body moisture. An infected person can transmit the virus simply by touch. Virus, invades the human body through skin contact. The infected person begins to exhibit low-temperature cold air from the body surface. Areas covered by the cold air will form frost, becoming uncontrollable and attacking others indiscriminately. Similarly, the virus can be transmitted simply by touch. In addition, on the last page of the files, he saw some relatively brief content regarding the conjecture and introduction of muscle relaxant. It's very strange. The order from over there was to give this to you to look at, saying you should research it yourself. Professor Freeze was also full of doubts. What about you, teacher? Caesar asked casually, gripping the files in his hand tightly. Professor Freeze said with distress. Of course, I'm still responsible for researching amber-lead disease. It's just a bit tricky. Although it looks like just chronic heavy metal poisoning, the key is that it can be inherited by the next generation. It is indeed a very special symptom. Caesar had also followed his teacher to interact with amber-lead disease patients these past few days, and then expressed some of his own thoughts. Teacher, although my current knowledge isn't very solid, after reading about the various viruses in these files, I was thinking if we could use viruses or toxic gas to target the amber-lead substance? Professor Freeze looked at Caesar in surprise and said. Continue. Yes, since amber-lead disease is hereditary, it means it's related to the lineage factor discovered by Dr. Vegapunk. And the mummy virus and virus in these files clearly also have an effect on the lineage factor. So, as long as we find a way to research these two viruses, and once the technology is mature, we can create a variant virus targeting amber-lead, directly solving the amber-lead within the human body at the lineage factor level. Professor Freeze blinked after listening, pondered for a moment, and felt that this line of thought was worth trying. He immediately smiled and praised. You are indeed a genius, Caesar. Caesar immediately showed a shy expression upon being praised, wiggling his body awkwardly, and laughed while scratching the back of his head. I just thought of it. Alright, you go and finish the biosafety station on the red line first. When you get back, we'll research this mummy and together. Professor Freeze slapped the table and decided. Okay, but I think that Land of Death is also quite interesting. Caesar said, blushing, pointing to the content in the files and praising. I think its artistic sense is far greater than Isuna. It must have been thought up by a great genius. Although the latter's effect is good, it looks too crude. Then why don't we find a way to combine them? Professor Freeze said. Combine them? Caesar was stunned for a moment and said uncertainly. You mean to change the transmission method of the Isuna virus into the gasification of the Land of Death? As he spoke, a screen feed subconsciously appeared in his mind, a patch of ice-blue toxic mist spreading throughout a city on an island. All the residents engulfed by the toxic mist rapidly developed cold frost on their body surface, then senselessly engaged in mutual slaughter, eventually turning into a scene of complete silence. What a wonderful, artistic bioweapon. Caesar immediately felt a surge of excitement and quickly turned and ran towards the research room's gate. Teacher, I'm going to the Red Line now. He now wanted both to visit the Red Line and to immediately start researching these interesting viruses, but he didn't want to choose one, he wanted both. Professor Freeze looked at the automatically closing gate and smiled helplessly. At the same time, his gaze became profound. He was wondering where the world government got these files from. The key was that no matter if it was the land of death, mummy, or Isuna, they all looked like dangerous biochemical viruses with extremely strong infectivity. To be honest, his bottom line had not yet been broken, so subconsciously, he didn't really want to research them. But if Caesar's idea just now was correct, and Amber Lee disease could really be solved with viruses, it could indeed save the citizens of a kingdom. Conflict, an extremely painful hesitation. But then again, if he didn't follow the world government's order to conduct the research, he definitely wouldn't be able to continue as the director of the Biochemical Research Institute. Coupled with the various biochemical secrets he had known for so many years, there was an 80% chance he would be dealt with. Forget it, forget it. Let's just consider it for the citizens of White Town, and also for my wife and daughter. As for the rest, let's see how the world government uses it. Professor Freeze comforted himself in a low voice. Chapter 115, Cusan's Anxiety from the Internal Competition. Fishman Island, Mermaid Cove. Vice Admiral Garp, what brings you here? Cusan looked at Garp walking down from the warship with a look of pleasant surprise and quickly went forward to greet him. Ha 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 ha, aren't I just passing by? I thought I'd drop by and see you, and also the branch being built here. Anyway, the coding technology here is the best in the world, it won't take much time and won't delay anything. Garp threw his head back and laughed heartily, attracting curious glances from many mermaid misses around, as they had also watched the live broadcast of the event called the One Piece Great Sea Battle before. Therefore, they were particularly curious about this marine hero who could punch and shatter such an exaggerated super tsunami. Actually, Garp had been to Fishman Island many times before, but back then, these mermaids and fishmen had no concept of a marine hero. This time, it can be considered something that shocked the entire world. Let's go, take me to see how the branch here is different from the ones up above. Under the worshipful gazes of the Navy soldiers on both sides, Garp strode forward, with Cusan following a step behind, leading the way from the side. The scene was quite interesting. Although the former was called a marine hero, that was a civilian title. In Marine headquarters, he was actually just a regular vice admiral rank, but the latter's admiral candidate was a solid official title. Yet, Cusan willingly followed behind Garp. In his opinion, even if he became a marine admiral, except for very formal occasions, he should still treat Garp with respect in private. Oh right, is Kaido of the Beasts imprisoned on your ship? Can I take a look? Cusan asked with a grin, his hands in his pockets as he followed along. Garp agreed nonchalantly, saying, "Sure, when this old man leaves, you can come up with me and take a look. That kid's appearance is really quite something, over 7 meters tall, and he has long horns on his head like a bull." "Thank you, Vice Admiral Garp." Not long after, the two of them led a group of subordinates to the construction site of the branch. Most of it had already been built, and some outlines and basic style could be seen. Yo, it really is different from the branches up above. The roofs are all made of large seashells, that's interesting. This is the first time I've seen a marine branch like this. Garp was amused. He directly took out a senbei bag from the large pocket of his coat of justice and started eating senbei. He also handed a piece to Cusan, who didn't refuse and took a bite. "Vice Admiral, I just received an order saying that I need to go to the extreme ice continent to find the treasure of Chinjiao of the Hapo Navy from Flower Country, something called Jewel Iceberg." "Chinjiao?" Garp burst into laughter upon hearing the familiar name. This old man has heard about that matter too. Ever since his head was flattened by my punch, he seems to have been unable to retrieve the treasure under the ice layer. It makes him go there once every year to check. After speaking, he thought of something and turned to look at Cusan, saying, "Be careful if you run into him when you go. Although that guy's combat power is basically halved after losing his pointed head, his armament hockey and 8-impact fist martial arts are still a considerable threat to you." "Okay." Cusan obediently accepted the warning, then said, "However, I can't spare the time right now. The reverie is about to be held, and I definitely need to be responsible for escorting King Neptune and Queen Itoheim. Indeed, the royalty located in the Four Seas, those who are relatively far away, should have already set off." Garp nodded. He had experienced countless reveries and was very familiar with them. "So I can only go after the reverie. But there's another problem, this place is too far from the extreme ice continent in the South Blue. It will take several months for a round trip, and during this time, Fishman Island will be left unguarded." Cusan put on a troubled expression. "As you know, this place often has pirates from the New World. Although my Marines can handle ordinary pirates, they can't deal with tough opponents. There must be a vice admiral stationed at the branch." Garp immediately understood the meaning behind the kid's words. He stuck his finger into his nostril, looked sideways, and pouted, saying, "You want this old man to guard it for you, huh?" As expected of Vice Admiral Garp. Kuzen praised, giving a thumbs up. "You brat, fine. Anyway, I don't have much to do. When you go to the extreme ice continent, this old man will come here to watch over things. The environment of Fishman Island is pretty good, living here for a while is also nice." Garp didn't make things difficult for Kuzen and readily agreed. In the future, there will definitely be fewer and fewer pirates from the first half of the Grand Line, and even fewer who can reach here through the Sabati Archipelago. This place, Fishman Island, only needs to guard against pirates from the New World. Your pressure here won't be very high in the future. Yes, yes, yes. The Sabati Archipelago is now guarded by Dragon, and he's doing a great job. It's very lively there. Just the day before yesterday, I heard that a killer broke into the Marine branch and was caught by him. Kuzen understood Garp's temper. This was him wanting to be praised about his son, so how simple was it to satisfy that? Besides that, this old man heard from Sengoku that they are also setting up a Marine branch at Reverse Mountain, with Borsalino serving as base commander to guard it. It's like blocking the entrance between the Four Seas and the Grand Line, that's the key. Kuzen said in surprise. Reverse Mountain branch? I've been there too, I didn't see any island nearby that could serve as a base. Humphrey, this old man didn't ask for the specifics, but they definitely have a way. Garp said nonchalantly, then added. Alright, I've seen enough. This old man will go meet King Neptune first, you go get busy. Okay, please take your time. Kuzen quickly bowed and saw the important figure off. He then stood in place and started thinking. He recalled the night they celebrated Dragon's promotion to Vice Admiral. Reverse Mountain, plus 4G branches, Sabati Archipelago, Fishman Island, plus the 4G1 branches in the New World. They really have set up heavy checkpoints along the entire Grand Line. Looking at it this way, pirates from the Four Seas can enter the Grand Line, so the pirate situation in the first half is stabilized. At the same time, the New World in the second half is completely blocked off. After pondering for a moment, he felt that the higher-ups of the Marines, no, it should be said the higher-ups of the world government, were planning some major action against the New World. Although Kuzen usually appeared hot-blooded, he actually thought quite a lot deep down, especially his thoughts on the world were no less than Dragon's. He could also see that the world government had always intentionally kept the Marines and pirates in a state of balance, where they were in opposition but did not engage in serious conflict. But now, it seems the world government's attitude towards pirates has changed. Forget it, I'll find out about these things as time goes on. If they really are going to clear out those great pirates, it's a good thing, but it would be best if it happened a few years later. Otherwise, with my current strength, I can't participate in major matters. Kuzen shook his head helplessly, thinking. He was indeed a bit anxious. Among the admiral candidates, he was the only one who hadn't awakened. Dragon had only eaten the hurricane fruit for a little over a year and had already awakened. But how was his ice fruit ability supposed to awaken? He had no clue. He had also consulted Borsalino, but the latter had simply said that he awakened one day after taking a nap in the sun. This was truly speechless. Awakening this kind of thing and ability had nothing to do with training, it completely depended on opportunity. I'm even starting to doubt if my current ability can open the ice layer in the polar region. If I spend several months going there and then find out I can't open it, that would really be a joke. If people found out. Chapter 116, Latest Hints about the Stargates. First half of the Grand Line, Drum Kingdom. Knock knock knock, hearing the somewhat heavy knocking, Dr. Cura shifted her gaze from the treatment report on the Amber Lee disease patients on her desk. Come in. Dr. Cura. The person who entered was none other than Zephyr, the former Marine Admiral, who had only arrived a few days ago but had already begun receiving medical treatment. Dr. Cura glanced at the clock on the wall and looked at him in confusion. It doesn't seem to be time for your routine checkup yet? Or has your asthma flared up again? No, ever since I took the medicine you gave me, my breathing hasn't been uncomfortable these past few days. Zephyr sat down on the chair opposite the desk and shook his head with a smile. The reason I came over is to tell you that when King Arnold goes to marry Joyce in a few days, I want to personally be responsible for escorting him. The round trip will take about half a month, so I came to inform you. Zephyr's tone was filled with respect for Dr. Cura. One reason was her superb medical skill. The doctors at Marine headquarters had previously said his asthma was incurable, but upon arriving here, she said it could be cured completely, though it would require a 3-month treatment process. The effect over the past few days had indeed been good. Only the requirement not to drink alcohol or smoke was too difficult to endure. The second reason was her impressive age of 115 years. She was an absolute elder, which was why he didn't even refer to himself using the term old man. Dr. Kira asked, puzzled. Why do you need to personally escort him? Medical doctor, I remember for the previous reverie, Marine headquarters would send a warship and an officer. To be honest, I'm not very keen on you interrupting your treatment for half a month. This will prolong your subsequent treatment time. To thank you for curing my illness, I was thinking of doing something to repay you a little. It just so happens that King Arnold is going to attend the reverie, so I can do something for the Drum Kingdom. Zephyr said with a smile. However, Dr. Kira didn't appreciate it after hearing him, and said bluntly. What does thanking the medical doctor have to do with that little fellow Arnold? I'm not familiar with him. Besides, you've already paid the full medical fee and don't owe me anything. I don't need any extra repayment from you. But you are my patient now, so you must obey my arrangements. Therefore, I forbid it. Your primary task as a patient is to listen to the doctor and get your illness cured. She completely disregarded Zephyr's identity and simply treated him as an ordinary patient from a doctor's stance, which made the well-meaning Zephyr feel awkward. Alright, since you're already here, let's start today's checkup early. It'll be good for you to get back and train your students as soon as possible. Dr. Kira stood up. Ha, there's no rush for that. Those lads are doing winter swimming around the island. They won't be finished for several hours. Zephyr laughed heartily, not angry in the slightest. Medical doctor told you before, using only medicine can only alleviate your asthma. The medicine you're taking now targets the chronic inflammation of the airway and also serves a nourishing purpose. Later, you'll still need to undergo surgery to cure it completely. Yes, I'm relying on you for my illness. I'll listen to everything you say. Fishman Island, inside Ryugu Palace. Your Majesty, when shall we depart from Mary Joyce? Queen Atoheim, with her beautiful golden hair, was feeling both nervous and anticipatory at this moment. After all, she was going to give a speech in front of 50 kings, and it might even concern whether this agenda item could pass. The enormous King Neptune, with a face full of orange-red hair, lowered his head and explained in a gentle tone. We are the closest to the ground, so there's no need to go in advance. We just need to go on the day the reverie is convened. How are your preparations for the speech? It was a bit strange to say, but he, as Queen Atoheim's husband and even the King of Fishman Island, was refused by her when he asked to hear the speech content in advance. Queen Atoheim's reason was that she wanted to pour all her passion into this one speech to maximize its effect, so she couldn't rehearse in advance. No problem, I will definitely go all out for the future of the fishmen. Queen Atoheim puffed out her chest and looked at King Neptune with a determined gaze. Good, then I'll leave it to you. Yes. Meanwhile, the kings of Goa Kingdom in the East Blue, Illusa Kingdom in the West Blue, Flower Country, Yanod Kingdom in the South Blue, Germa Kingdom in the North Blue, and many other kings who held seats in the reverie. After the warships sent by Marine headquarters arrived, they brought a small number of guards and rode on their own royal ships, successively gathering towards the direction of the Red Line. The kings from the first half and second half of the Grand Line were slightly more relaxed and didn't need to set off so many days in advance, but they could already feel that this year's reverie was unusual. The world government's activities this year had been truly too eye-catching. It had long since aroused worry, vigilance, and anticipation in many people. At this moment, all the undercurrents or overt waves were surging towards Mary Joyce, located at the summit of the Red Line, a place called the Holy Land by the world. Inside Pangaea Castle, the instigator of all this turmoil, was rarely seen enjoying a game on the court. Instead, he sat alone in the treehouse between the moon, staring with a serious expression at the empty air where there was nothing. From an outsider's perspective, it was like this. But from M's perspective, before his eyes were lines of explanatory text spread across a semi-transparent background image full of starlight. This was the latest prompt he had just discovered upon waking up this morning. Compared to the previous introduction, this explanation looked more like a complete version. However, judging from the display date, it appeared on the second day after he activated the first Stargate. It was just that this star chart had no notification sound, causing him to see it a few days late. This also reminded him that it was best to look at the star chart every day in the future, otherwise, with no sound at all, it was really easy to overlook some information. Besides being able to obtain permission to open a small Stargate connecting to a random planet every year, every third year, in addition to the regularly obtained small Stargate, one of the 3 small Stargates can be upgraded to a medium Stargate. In the 10th year, in addition to the regularly obtained small Stargate, one of the 3 medium Stargates can also be upgraded to a large Stargate. A medium Stargate is 300 meters high and 200 meters wide. A large Stargate is 30,000 meters high and 20,000 meters wide. Seeing this, Im felt he had figured it out. Wasn't this just nakedly tempting him to initiate large-scale interstellar invasion? He had felt before that the small Stargate, which was 3 meters high and 2 meters wide, was too small. It would take a very long time for a large troop to pass through, and large vehicles, warships, and so on simply couldn't enter. But this medium Stargate was completely different. Even the giant race and small-sized Sea Kings could easily enter. In addition to this, it also explained in detail his specific control over the Stargates. He could freely adjust the Stargate switch, freely adjust the Stargate position, and freely observe around the Stargate. The observation range depended on the Stargate level. Small Stargate, 100 meters radius. Medium Stargate, 1,000 meters radius. Large Stargate, 10,000 meters radius. When operating, he just needed to use his will to command. However, when adjusting the Stargate, he could only adjust from one side. For example, if he was located on Planet C, Pirate Planet, and then opened a Stargate on the court below, while in the world on the other side, the Stargate appeared on the sea. Then, if he wanted to move the Stargate to Marine headquarters, he just needed to have its concept, position, and specific visual in his mind, and he could directly project that Stargate there. But the position in the world on the other side of the Stargate would still be on the sea. If he wanted to move it to a place outside the observation range, then he would need to personally pass through the Stargate to reach the other world, and then in that world adjust the Stargate's position in that world. And this core Stargate. Im was most interested in this. Although the core Stargate could only appear near his location, it allowed him to freely enter and exit other open Stargates. This was unlike others who, when many Stargates were open, would have to find the corresponding gate to travel to a specific world. This is convenient. Otherwise, if there are more people in the future, won't they have to queue up? As soon as these words were spoken, he immediately amused himself. Chapter 117, Kaido of the Beasts officially imprisoned in Impel Down. After reading the latest explanation of the star chart, Im looked outside through the window. Mihawk was bare-chested on the silver-gray ground, constantly swinging a giant barbell and shedding hot sweat. Im then picked up the handset on the back of the transponder snail and dialed the dial. Lord Amu. Soon, the transponder snail, mimicking the appearance of Saint Shepherd Jupiter, greeted respectfully with his expression and tone. Im asked coldly. Has the first batch of Cypher Pal to be sent into the Stargate been selected? It has already been selected. I am preparing to dispatch Cypher Pal 9 agent led by Lucci, with a total of 10 people. 2 people will be responsible for guarding the Stargate on the other side of the world, and the remaining 8 people will be divided into 4 teams to explore in 4 directions. Since we still don't know if the transponder snail can be used normally in another world, or if it can connect across the Stargate, we still need to complete experiments in this regard. But all of this must wait until the construction of the biosafety station is completed. Then, researchers wearing advanced hazmat suits will first test the air composition of another world. Saint Shepherd Jupiter briefly introduced the plan devised by the professionals under him. A biosafety station is indeed necessary. Im, listening from his side, nodded secretly and greatly approved in his heart of their caution and carefulness. After all, no one knows if the air in another world contains special bacteria or gases. What is most feared is that they will be brought back to the home world by the dispatched personnel. Is there a confirmed time? From the construction department side, according to the guidance opinion of the Biochemical Research Institute, it has been determined that the biosafety station requires 20 days of construction time, which is exactly 3 days before this reverie. Saint Shepherd Jupiter replied respectfully. Testing the air takes time, and the transponder snail communication experiment can also be conducted simultaneously. If there are no major issues, then dispatch Cypher Pal 9 agent on the day the reverie convenes. Im felt this day was quite significant. He is now very much looking forward to what the world behind this first Stargate is like. Understood. Saint Shepherd Jupiter naturally did not dare to have any opinion. After Im on that side hung up the call first, he then put the handset back on the back of the transponder snail. It seems it's confirmed. Inside the room of authority, Saint Topman Warcurry said sternly. We are about to come into contact with another world, or even another planetary civilization. Saint Shepherd Jupiter revealed a handsome smile and then looked at Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn who was holding Shodai Kaitetsu. Outside the biosafety station, there will definitely need to be army guards. Although the possibility is small, no one knows if creatures from that world will break in once the Stargate opens again. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn knew this point. This is not a problem. At that time, there will be a unit from the army that is the first to complete the re-equipment of automatic weapons and is equipped with armored vehicles, tanks, and other military vehicles, responsible for security. Moreover, Area RL 1556 is adjacent to the Army headquarters in Area RL 1555. If any tricky matters arise, large troops can provide support immediately, and there's also that kid Douglas Barrett. Saint Shepherd Jupiter asked. Just re-equipping isn't enough, right? No matter how good the equipment is, if the soldiers' quality is insufficient, they cannot be called a first-class army. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn nodded and said. That's why Lord Damu transferred Barrett to the army, but the training unit will definitely need some time. This cannot be rushed. Can we consider dispatching some Marines over, or directly transferring a portion of the Marines into the army? St. Jaga Ursha Saturn asked. Since Lord Damu didn't mention letting the Marines participate, there is a reason for it. And the Marines also have a lot of matters to deal with. Let's leave it for now.